Commissioner Becerra.
Here.
Commissioner Verino.
Here.
Commissioner Alderetti.
Here.
Vice Chair Contreras-Leo.
Here.
Chair McLaughlin.
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza.
Here.
Commissioner Nguyen.
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Allie, would you lead us in the pledge? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to public comments. Does a member of the public have any public comments on non-agenda items? You may fill out a card to request to speak from the secretary. And after introduction, you have 3 minutes to speak unless extended by the chair. Does anybody have any public comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll close the public comments. Consent calendar. At this time, the Commission would consider the matters of the consent calendar for items A and B. Does any of the members have any corrections to the minutes and items that they wish they pull at separate discussion or abstain on?
I just wanted to point out in the minutes, the adjourned section, it says the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 87. Should be December 11th. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments relative to the minutes? Having a full quorum, we have no absence. So have a motion on the minutes of the last meeting. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Business calendar. We'll now move on to the business calendar. Please be advised that the action of the Planning Commission shall become effective the day following the first regularly scheduled City Council meeting after 10 days 10 days after the appeal period, unless if allowed by the Santa Ana Municipal Code, an appeal to the City Council is filed with the clerk of the council and a copy sent to the Planning Department within 10 days of the date of the Commission's actions, or unless set for public hearing by the City Council. An appeal from a decision or requirement of the Planning Commission may be made by any interested party, individual, or group. At this time and place, we'll discuss public hearing item number 1, modify the conditional use permit on number 2011-09 to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption at Mauritius Zamora, located at 3701 West McFadden Avenue, units G, H, I, and J. Do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Hearing none, staff, please do your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman McLaughlin. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'll be filling in for Scarlett Marr on items 1, 2, and 3 on tonight's agenda. Up for discussion tonight is modification to conditional use permit number 2011-9 for the property located at 3701 West McFadden Avenue, units G, H, I, and J. This project proposes to modify the existing CUP to allow the sale of distilled spirits in addition to beer and wine, for which the property is already entitled. The project also does not include any expansion of use beyond the units identified earlier. This is the site. It's a multi-tenant commercial building in the Harbor-specific plan, northeast corner of McFadden and Harbor, and it's surrounded by commercial and industrial land uses. And this is the site plan indicating the location of the specific restaurant. And this floor plan indicates the areas that alcohol is currently displayed. Again, no changes to the scope in that manner. This photo shows the site as it exists today. So this project has come before you several times. At the last hearing, the commission identified several items that needed to be addressed, and staff prepared a revised report showing the compliance and conformance to the code requirements, as well as some of the issues that were identified earlier in November. The first was excessive window signage. The municipal code allows up to 25% of each pane to be covered. The applicant removed much of the painted signs, brought it down to 25%. The second was identification of flashing lights. Those have been removed. The planned sign program was originally a condition on the original CUP. Further staff research found that a sign program had been submitted and approved by the Planning Division back in 2005. The fourth item was interior tenant improvements. Tenant improvement plans were submitted on November 11th, 2017, and the city's building division is currently reviewing those tenant improvement plans through a standard submittal process. Finally, live entertainment was identified as requiring a permit. Chapter 11 requires an entertainment permit for any business that offers on-site live entertainment, and an application was submitted on November 28th, 2017 to permit the entertainment. So in re-reviewing the project, staff finds that the site, the applicant are now conforming and in compliance with all 5 of the items identified. The restaurant will continue to provide a service to the surrounding community as it has been doing so for the past several years. And then finally, the standards that are in the municipal code will ensure that the restaurant continue to operate as a bona fide restaurant and mitigate any impacts that may be generated. Staff also reached out to the neighborhood association president today, spoke with him about any concerns he may have had with the project, and he did not identify any and was in support of the project. So based on this analysis and the compliance with the items that were brought up last time, staff recommends approval of the modification to this CUP. Be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Does the commission have any questions of staff? Go ahead. Cynthia?
Thank you. So of the items that we recommended they follow up on, some of them then are still not complete. They just submitted for them to be completed, but they're actually not approved. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Vince.
That's correct. And I don't believe that Ali has the most recent update. I was at the counter today at 4 o'clock, and the applicant's architect came in and got the plans approved for the tenant improvements. So that portion is done. They're pulling a permit either this afternoon or tomorrow. That permit will be obtained. They were asked by the fire department to be put on hold for the entertainment permit until they got this TI permit first. So now the TI permit's being issued here, if not already issued, they can move on for the final step, which is get the entertainment permit taken care of. So they are moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Vince, so what you were saying then is that the entertainment permit has been submitted for, it's just that they can't process it until these TIs have been cleared for a permit.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Beatrice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was reading the report, I'm not sure if this is similar to the one that we obtained the first time, but it said that in 2009, they applied for a permit for entertainment and also to extend the sale of alcohol till 2 a.m. It said that the use of the sale of alcohol was denied, which kind of told me that the entertainment one was granted. So I'm a little bit confused.
There was a little bit of back and forth on the project site and the specific restaurant back in the day when the zoning administrator handled requests for alcohol licenses. At the time that that request happened, the request for alcohol was originally denied. However, subsequent actions allowed the alcohol to sell, or the applicant to sell beer and wine only. In addition, back then, entertainment was done as conditions of approval on the CUP rather than as a separate entertainment permit. So this restaurant in specific had its entertainment granted to it through the conditions of approval. However, back in 2013, when the City Council approved the new alcohol and entertainment ordinance, it moved entertainment from CUPs to a separate permit. And even if you had entertainment on your existing CUP, it's still required that you come in and get that entertainment permit separate of the CUP. So that addresses the entertainment portion of it.
So were they informed of this, that they had to get a separate permit for the entertainment at that time? Were they informed?
Yes, when the city updated its ordinance back in 2013, all businesses that were identified as selling alcohol, actually all restaurants in Santa Ana with a business license, received mailers and notifications indicating that they needed the permit.
Excuse me. And the other question I have is, when you do grant the entertainment license, is it always the case that you have to wait 12 months to ensure that they're, working within the guidelines, and then you decide then if you should keep it or not? Is 12 months the what the ordinance says, or can we do 6 months?
It's both. Since that is a condition of approval, you do have the option of modifying it to specifically answer that question. However, 12 months is kind of a internal standard. All entertainment permits need renewal anyways after 12 months, so it's a chance for the city every year to reevaluate if an operator is in good standing. And then secondly, 12 months is kind of like a police department accepted standard to gather enough statistical data to have an accurate statistical reporting period.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions of staff? We'll move on. Is the applicant here, and would the applicant like to speak at this time? No? Okay. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication regarding this item?
We have not.
Thank you. We will now move on to the public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out a request to speak with the Secretary. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to make any public comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll close the public comments. Do we have a motion for item 1 at this time? Any other discussion? Okay.
Chairman McLaughlin,
Lynette?
I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving modification to conditional use permit number 2011-09 as conditioned.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Eric? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vote 7-0. This is the time and place for public hearing on item number 2. Modify the conditional use permits numbers 2013-02, 2013-03, and 2013-07 to allow after-hours operations, sale of alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption, and the expansion of the banquet facility into the adjacent suite for C4 Deli located at 200 and 202 North Broadway. Do any of the commissioners at this time have anything to disclose on this item? Hearing none. Ally?
Thank you, Chairman McLaughlin. Good evening again, members of the Planning Commission. Up for discussion, number 2 is modification to conditional use permits number 2013-2, 3, and 7 for the property located at 200 and 202 North Broadway. This project seeks to expand C4 Deli into an adjacent tenant suite. The subject facility C4 is already entitled to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits, as well as to provide after-hours operation until 2 a.m. and to have banquets on occasion. The modification is required in order to carry over those entitlements to the adjacent suite. This is the Empire Market building in which the business is located. The adjacent tenant suite is currently vacant, but it has contained a variety of restaurants and other uses. It was last entitled by this body for Last Call on Broadway, which was a proposed restaurant and bar that never went through all the way. Prior to that, it was a variety of assembly uses, including a theater that hosted local productions. Surrounding the site is downtown Santa Ana, including multifamily residential, offices, commercial, and other similar establishments. This is the site plan. To the bottom is 2nd Street, and to the right is Broadway. C4 occupies the bottom portion of the building for this schematic and seeks to expand upward into Unit 202. And this is the proposed new floor plan, so the expansion to the north would basically double the size of the restaurant. There's existing seating, alcohol service area, as well as deli, food, sandwiches, grill, all that. It would basically double the capacity of the restaurant. So staff analyzed this project as well and found that the plan submitted and the project will meet all the standards of the SAMC. It will continue to operate as a restaurant as well as occasional banquet facility. The facility was previously entitled and, like I shared earlier, hosted a variety of assembly uses. This continues that line of similar type uses. And then the standards in the municipal code will again ensure that this facility remain in good compliance with all applicable standards. So based on that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve modification to the aforementioned CUPs.
Does the commission have any questions of staff? Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious, so when I was looking at the conditions of approval for the CUPs, CUP 02, condition number 1, and condition number 3 from CUP 07, they limit the outdoor business activity to midnight. And I was curious why that was put in there. And the reason I ask is because I know that the space across where the old Memphis was, they're allowed to be out there till 2. Lola Gaspar, I believe, is the same thing. I'm pretty sure Gypsy Den is. So I feel like this condition, I mean, it seems like, unless you guys tell me otherwise, they're a good operator. So is there any reason to add that sort of condition to them where it doesn't make them on equal footing with the other operators in the area?
Thank you. Staff has traditionally requested that that condition be added when a business is in close proximity to a sensitive use, like the multifamily residence in the artist village behind. The other examples that you cited you're correct, they are a little bit farther from that sort of sensitive use in that sort of high density setting with the residential. So some of the operators don't have that condition when they're farther away, and then others that are closer do. That's the background on it.
Now, aren't there residents still above Gypsy Den?
That is correct. However, going back to the idea of the density and the quantity of residential, I think that has dictated how and when that condition appears.
Well, I mean, it's a proximity issue, and you've got Gypsy Den literally underneath it, whereas C4's in a standalone, non-residential building, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Eric?
Thank you. Just one question. On the resolution under section 1A, it says Jeffrey Jensen. Is that the applicant?
That's JJ.
Oh, is it? Okay, I
That's
just wondered
JJ.
because it said Jeffrey Hall.
No, Jeffrey Hall isn't associated anymore. Jeffrey Jensen is.
All
is
right,
the
well, it
one.
says owner of C4 Deli in the executive center. So,
Yeah, yeah.
clear. Okay. I know now.
Any other questions of staff? Okay. Hearing none. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication on this item?
We have not.
Okay. Would the applicant like to speak at this time? Okay. No applicant. We'll go on to the public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out a request to speak with the Secretary. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll close public comments and we'll bring it back to the Commission. Do we have a motion to consider item number 2?
Mr.
Bill?
Chair, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving modifications to CUPs number 2013-02, 03, and 07 with the modifications to condition 1 on 02 and condition 3 on 07 to limit outdoor business activity to 1:45 a.m.
Okay. Second, Cynthia, thank you. Any discussion on the Lynette?
I just want to I was happy with the conditions as they were presented by staff, but with the amendment, I will not be supporting the motion. I think it is in close proximity to a highly functional family apartment structure with many units, and so I'm comfortable with the midnight, but I'm not with the extended outdoor hours, and that's the only reason for my no vote. Thank you.
Okay. Cynthia?
Just for clarification, isn't it till midnight?
Excuse me.
No,
No, he just
Opposite to-
extended it.
He extended it to 1:45.
So that's consistent with the other operators in the area.
Oh, okay, so, okay, thanks.
So,
I say
Patrice,
something?
yes?
I will be supporting the motion. I used to live at the Artist Village, and I could, I mean, for me, 145, I mean, you hear the others, so why not then? Why not then be entitled to as well?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add that, you know, and you can attest to this, Commissioner Mendoza, but when you sign up for a lease in those apartments, don't you sign a separate document that acknowledges that you're in an urban downtown and that, you know, the doors don't close at 8 p.m. and that there is going to be activity a little later in the evenings? Maybe not all night, obviously, but it'll be past 10 for sure.
Correct.
Any other discussion at this time? Mr. Kent?
We need to promote more business activity in downtown area, especially in Broadway and Main area, to stimulate more activity, business activities for residents as well for visitor to a city. I am support to the extension of the late hour for the businesses and support the motion from Commissioner Barraza.
Okay. Any other discussion? Madam Secretary, would you repeat the motion that's on the table at this time?
So the motion, as I understand, is to approve conditional use permit number 201302 as conditioned, adopt a resolution approving modification to conditional use permit 2013-03 and conditional use permit number 2013-07 with a modification to the conditions of approval to extend the the operating time to 1:45 a.m.
On the outside.
in the outdoor area.
Thank you.
And am I able to rescind?
You
my
can
second?
voted.
No, I know, but since I'm not going to
You
be
haven't voted, so-
supporting it, I
She
just
seconded the motion.
So you're not second.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion with a condition. We need a second.
I'm second.
Ken is seconded. Okay. Any further discussion? The motion is clear. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
So we have 4 to 3 at this time. Motion passes. This is the item in place for public hearing on item number 3, conditional use permit number 2017-25 to allow the renewal of an existing major wireless communication facility located at 1517 North Fairview Street. Does any of the commission have anything that they'd like to disclose at this time? Hearing none, staff? Ally?
Thank you, Chairman McLaughlin. Good evening for the last time, members of the Planning Commission. Up for discussion tonight is a renewal of an existing cell phone tower located at 1517 North Fairview Street. This is CUP number 2017-25. This project proposes to renew an existing monopine. As part of the renewal, the applicant agreed to replace 45 existing branches on the tower and to install 5 additional ones to enhance the appearance of the tree and to hide the equipment. This project requires approval of a new CUP due to the expiration of the previous one. The project site is highlighted by the arrow. The site is surrounded by commercial land uses, the river to the east, and some single-family residences to the west. This is the site plan indicating the location of the existing tower. And this close-up shows its location toward the rear corner of the project site. This is the site as it appears today. Staff evaluated the project and worked with the applicant to have them agree to installing new branches and replacing existing branches to help the tower look more like a natural pine tree and to help hide some of that equipment a little bit better. And this photo simulation shows what the facility will appear like when everything is complete. So the site currently meets all standards of the municipal code. The 5 new branches and the 45 replaced branches, as indicated earlier, will help the facility itself a little bit better. And as shared earlier, the project requires a new CUP to renew its life for another 10 years. We're happy to answer any questions at this time. But based on that, staff recommends approval of CUP 2017-25 as condition.
Does the commission have any questions of Ali at this time? Beatrice?
Yes, the question that I have, it said that in February 3rd, 2003, that's when they first submitted an application. It's not supposed to, or they're supposed to renew within at least 10 years, correct? And then I noticed that they added a new wireless company. So is the condition that if a new company comes in, then the accounting starts all over again, like they go back to year 1? Because otherwise they would have had to renew it in 2013.
Typically, the trigger for requiring the renewal is when the applicant comes in and submits a request for some modification or new equipment to the tower, and that usually serves as the heads up to staff to re-examine the original entitlement and see if a renewal is required. So in this case, some time had elapsed until the applicants approached the city, and that was the trigger for staff to realize that a renewal was required. And hence, the applicant applied, and we're here tonight.
Okay, but that is the case. Like, let's say that right now we approve it, and then a new wireless company wants to join that same tower, then you start counting the first year from there on. Is that how it works?
The 10 years is counted from the date of the original approval for the tower, the day that the resolution was approved.
10 years.
Okay, because the first year of approval was 2003. So they should have reapplied in 2013. That's what I'm asking.
That's correct, and there are instances where some time goes by between the expiration and the renewal CUP. In this case, some time had elapsed because the site had no activity going on, and staff was finally afforded the opportunity to know that it was expired when the application came in.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions of Ali? Hearing none, is the applicant here, and if so, would they like to speak at this moment?
No further comments, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication at this time?
We have not.
Okay. At this point in time, the public hearing is open. If anyone would wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out a request to speak with the Secretary. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Any public comments? Hearing none, we'll close public comments and we'll bring it back to the Commission. Do I have a motion to consider item number 3?
Mr. Chairman,
Ken?
I'd like to motion to adopt a resolution to approve conditional use permit number 2017-25.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0? Unanimous. This is time and place for a public hearing on item number 4. Thank you. Tentative track map.
I'm going to recuse myself on this vote. One of the law firms that's sent in a letter opposing this is my outside counsel on a number of cases.
For this,
Yeah,
for item number 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Okay, this is the time and place for public hearing on item number 4, tentative track map number 2017-02 and variance number 207-08 to allow the subdivision of single-family structures, 610 New Hope condos with deviations to frontage, setbacks, and building separation located at 610 South New Hope Street. Do any of the commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regard to this item?
I would like to disclose that I'm a good friend with the applicant, Mr. Steve Jones, for many years.
Any other disclosures? I will disclose that I did have a meeting on 12/5 with Steve Jones. I've known Steve Jones for a number of years, and Jill Wise. So that's my disclosure at this point. Any other comments? Okay, with that, staff, would you like to present? Ivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Before you this evening is application tentative parcel map 2017-2 and variance 2017-8. As you mentioned, it's for the property located at 610 South New Hope Street. So the project itself is to develop 9 single-family homes on a currently vacant lot. Each home will have its own condominium rights, so each home will be for sale. And as I will cover, the application requires approval of a tentative tract map to have these homes for sale with condominium purposes and several variances in order to develop the 9 homes. Those variances, I will go step by step if required, but the physical dimensions of the property are the reasons that these variances are being requested by the applicant. So one of them is the street frontage. The others are rear and side yard setbacks, and then the last one is the separation distances between residential homes. Oh. So as you can see, the intersection there is New Hope and McFadden, and the property is located just northwest of the intersection. As you can see by the red rectangle, it's a very odd shape, very uncommonly seen lot in the city. Therefore, it's been vacant. But the zoning itself is a 2-family R2 residential zone, which allows for more than one single-family home to be constructed on the lot. And it is surrounded by single-family, commercial, and school uses to the north and to the south. This is a current site photo. As you can see, it's pretty much vacant with the exception of a single-story, almost shed-type structure that's uninhabitable at the moment. And so all that will be demoed with a lot of trash that's been collected throughout the years. What I've provided for you is a little easier to kind of see. Since the property is extremely long in depth, it's kind of hard to bring the entire site plan without seeing little squares of each representation of a single family home. So on the top, what you'll see is on the right is New Hope Street with unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there is a hammerhead required by OCFA and for trash pickup from Public Works. Then you see unit 6. So on the bottom portion of the display, you'll see again unit 4, 5, the hammerhead turnaround, 6, 7, 8, and unit 9 at the end. And this is also a conceptual landscape plan. The final will be reviewed by planning and staff and approved after tenant improvements, after the plan check submittal. These are a few of the floor plans. So what the applicant has provided is for the 9 units, provided 4 different floor plans. Unit 1, Unit 9 will be completely different, facing New Hope Street. And then each unit in between will have an alternating floor plan and alternating material to be reviewed by staff as well. So each one of the units will provide a 2-car garage and 2 parking spaces in the driveway. These are some of the elevations. As you can see, between units, I've picked 2 separate units that follow the same sort of design so that you can see the difference in the materials being chosen. So those will still be reviewed by staff before the final approval in the submittal of the plans. And this is a watercolor rendering, and I have the full-size set if you wanted to take a look at that as well. And it's basically to see in true color. When you print something out, you don't really get to see what these homes will look like, but the applicant has provided a watercolor that really represents what the final product will be. And a little bit about the variances themselves. The minimum width requirement is 75 feet for an R2 parcel that develops more than one single family home. Unfortunately for this parcel, it's only 66 feet wide, which is slightly narrower, but the depth of the property is 570 feet. And so that is substantial to what we normally see for any R2 or duplexes, that sort of thing. So by creating the 9 units, they are building below the general plan land use designation for density units. They're actually providing one less than what they could construct out there. But this project will not be detrimental to the health, to the safety or general welfare of the people residing or working in the area. It is consistent with the general plan. We're not altering that at all. And it is consistent with the R2. The project will also provide additional housing opportunities for the city and for this property that has seen proposals to develop. but have not gone through completely. The previous submittal was the same for 9 units, but they, for some reason, withdrew from the application. And fortunately, we have something that I think represents what the neighborhood is in single-family form. And then the last one, as I mentioned, the conditions that are placed on this variance and on the tentative parcel map will help enhance the quality of life of the surrounding neighborhood by providing housing to a currently vacant lot. And then it's also setting precedent to these odd-shaped lots that I know are scattered throughout the city, but requiring variances to provide quality-type housing. We'll definitely bring those before the commission. Each one will be unique, of course. And with that, and I will be happy to answer any additional questions. The applicant is here. The engineer, the architect, and associates are here to answer any additional questions you might have. And with that, staff recommends that you approve tentative tract map number 2017-2 and variance number 2017-8 as conditioned.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you.
Before we get into commissioners' questions, Cynthia, you have a disclosure.
Yes, sorry, I didn't remember. I talked to so many people, but I do recall now that I did have a phone conversation with Joe Wallace in regards to this project.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions of staff? Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the gap that in the landscaping, that was due to the hammerhead for fire access, correct?
Yes, so it's essentially in the middle of the property, or as close as you can get for accessibility. The applicant will also be required to provide an on-site hydrant for any emergencies, but yes, that is the hammerhead. That's the separation between units 5 and 6, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I applaud the applicant's ability to get those units to work in there. So no, I just wanted to clarify. And then the other question I had was on condition of approval 4 and condition of approval 5. So number 4 says, on the tentative map, it states prior to approval of final map or issuance of building permits, CC&R shall be recorded. But then on the next condition, it says final map must be approved and recorded prior to issuance of building permits. So number 4 kind of gives hope that it could be either or, and then number 5 doesn't. I just wanted to understand what that was.
Yeah, and before we issue any approval to proceed into building plan check, we will need to review every department that is required to review these CC&Rs, Public Works, Planning. They will review them before any final approval is given. And then also at the same time, the final map will be reviewed. So at the point that the CC&Rs are finalized and ready to go, we're hoping that the tract map will also be ready to go. And so that at that point, the applicant can submit the building plan check.
Can I respond to that question?
Yeah.
I asked that same question as well, because I was a little concerned about the sequence and timing. And the response was that the applicant had requested the opportunity to either have them for sale product or for rent product. So that was the response that I got on that.
I don't think that answers what I'm asking.
It was
no. What I'm asking is just so simply. It says on here that on one condition you have it could be either approval, final map, or issuance of building permits, and then the next condition says it's got to be final map must be approved before the issuance of building permits. So I'm not talking about the division of the land. What I'm trying to understand is it's saying in here that on one point it's an either or, and then on the next condition it's stated. So I'm wondering, in other words, is there an error on 4 or on 5?
So you're looking at, just to clarify, you're looking at the tentative
Just to clarify,
trap
I just
map.
want to understand which way it's going. I don't have a concern either way. I wanted to understand from my own understanding.
So you're looking at conditions number 4 and 5, right?
Correct. So one gives a choice and one does not.
Those will, these are standard, almost standard comments, but I believe those should have been together at some point to eliminate the if,
like as
you
in
mentioned.
one condition?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Again, it's a point of clarifying, not any concern. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff at this time? Okay, hearing none. Would the applicant at this point in time like to speak?
Not necessarily, but we're prepared to answer any questions.
Okay. Do the commissioners have any questions of the applicant at this point? Patrice?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for the RK Engineering. Is that a separate,
Which?
the RK Engineering group that did?
That was mismarked.
Oh, it was mismarked?
It was
Oh, got it.
mismarked.
Okay,
It
thank
should
you.
have been 5, it should have been 4.
Got it.
In the packet, there was no item 4. There were 2 item 5s.
Got it.
That packet that you have now should be have number 4 at the bottom.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. So you don't have a question on item 4?
No.
All right, thank you. Any questions to the applicant at this point in time? No? All right. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication on this item?
We have not.
Pardon? We haven't?
We
Okay.
have not.
We'll open this for public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out a request to speak to the Secretary. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any questions at this point in time on the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close public hearing at this point. We'll bring it back to the Commission. Do we have a motion to consider item number 4?
Mr. Chair,
Phil?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving tentative map number 2017-02 as conditioned, and adopt a resolution for each of the variances, numbers 2017-08. Are they all 08? Yes. Okay, that's easy. 2017-08 as conditioned.
I'm second.
Second, Ken? Any further?
Do I need to clarify, or it's fine, right? For all the ones designated as 2017-08.
We're okay, Lisa? Yes. Okay. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Eric has recused himself at this point in time, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0 with Eric already recused himself. Okay. This is the time and place for public hearing on item number 5, mitigated negative declaration and environmental review of number 2017-96, amendment application of 2017-02, conditional use permit number 2017-29, and variance number 2017-07 to allow a new hotel, the Hampton Inn, with deviations from off-street parking, setback, wall height, and signs located at 2129 North Main Street.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I also have a conflict on this one. Some of the letters have gone back and forth with outside counsel or with counsel, so I'm going to recuse myself. From
That's
this
fine.
one. It'll probably happen on 6 too.
You're on a roll. Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, do any other commissioners have anything that they wish to disclose at this time regarding this item?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, Thursday, I was at an event where I was with Mr. Coleman, and this project was discussed.
Okay,
That's all.
that's fair. Anybody else? Okay, from my standpoint, I need to disclose a number of things. I am on the Santa Ana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Kevin Coleman is also on the Santa Ana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I am also part of the Economic Development Council, which has discussed this item before, and also part of the Government Affairs Council on the Chamber, which Kevin is the chair of, and I'm part of that. I've also reviewed this with Lisa Stork from the standpoint of any conflict of interest on my part, and there is none at this point in time because there's nothing financial or anything involved from that perspective. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not recusing myself from this item. Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have disclosure. I spoke briefly with the applicant on September 20th when they were here in the chambers for their initial approval for the property. We just happened to both be here in the council chambers at that time. I don't think he had even submitted formal plans to the city, but we just had a very super brief chat.
Okay, all disclosures out? All right. With that, we'll go on with the presentation. Selena, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the Planning Commission. The application before you tonight is proposed by Net Development Company, proposing to construct a Hampton Inn by Hilton hotel. The project consists of 6 stories in height, 135 rooms. It will also include on-site amenities that are typically associated with hotels, a pool deck, restaurant, and outdoor dining areas. Also proposed with the project is to relocate an existing historic structure and to provide alterations to both historic structures in order to convert them to restaurant uses. And there will be a total of 126 parking spaces on this 1.9-acre site. In order to construct the project, the applicant will demolish the public parking lot, an office building at 211 North Main Street, and a single-family dwelling at 2058 North Bush Street. So this is not the first time that the subject property has been before a decision-making body. It was brought forth to the City Council back in September of 2016, and this was for an exclusive negotiation agreement, which essentially means that the city would not be talking to any outside parties, only Net Development for the sale of the property. Since then, after that, the applicant did submit plans to the city planning staff for review, and we had a sunshine ordinance meeting, which was triggered by the zone change that's proposed for the subject property and the size of the project, of course. At that meeting, there were 32 members of the public that attended. The meeting minutes are included as an attachment to the staff report, and the comments included from the public can be viewed there. Later, in May of 2017, the City Council reviewed the purchase and sale agreement of the subject property, and this was done through our Community Development Agency. At that time, the Council was made aware of some parking comments that were made, and it was continued to the next meeting, at which time the Council did approve the purchase and sale agreement for the subject property to Net Development for a hotel. I'm just going to, over tonight's presentation, going to provide some context of the site. It is located at 211 North Main Street. If you look at the PowerPoint, sorry, the laser pointer is pretty dull. But to the north would be the public parking lot. This building here will be demolished. It's a 2-story office building. This is the existing historic structure. The associated accessory structures on the site would also be demolished. This building here at 2056 North Bush Street would be relocated approximately where the existing office building is to complement the buildings on the site. And then 2058 North Bush Street would be demolished in order to construct the project. And then you can see the subject site is located just south of the 5 freeway. There are multifamily residential projects directly to the south and commercial uses to the west. Additional context would be the views from Main Street. Here you can see the parking lot, which was to the north. The photo below is shows the office building that will be demolished and the historic structure which will remain and be converted to a restaurant. Here are some photos from Bush Street showing the views of the city parking lot and then the 2 subject properties as well. This is 2056 North Bush Street, a bungalow which would be relocated to Main Street, and then this green structure here is 2058 North Bush Street, which would be demolished with construction of the project. So here's just a table summarizing some project information. I've gone over most of that already in regards to adjacent uses and location of the hotel project. What I have not gone into is the general plan and zoning designations for the subject site. The general plan is the district center, which has a subzone of museum district. This was established within the general plan to create an area that captures all of the adjacent attractions in the city, Bowers Museum, Kidseum, and the Discovery Cube of Orange. which are in close proximity of the hotel development, and then the hotel development is consistent with that general plan designation as it supports those uses. The zoning for the subject property is community commercial with the museum district overlay, and also professional. Also want to note here that the subject site is within a height exempt area of the city. Here's the proposed site plan. As you can see, the hotel building was placed adjacent to Main Street, followed by the relocated historic structure, which would be used with the outdoor dining in between. The applicant proposes one restaurant operator that will operate both buildings and for a restaurant use. And then followed behind the site is the hotel, the parking lot for the hotel. The main entrance is off of Main Street, and there is an emergency vehicle access only point off of Bush Street. In addition, it's important to note that the alley will be reconfigured and have access for trash truck vehicles and a turnaround for the public on site. Here are some renderings of the proposed hotel. This is the view from Main Street. As you can see, there is an outdoor pool and deck that would be utilized by visitors of the hotel. And this is the view looking from the interior of the site with the porte cochere and the main entrance of the building focused on the interior. Building elevations. The project has varied roof lines, different materials. There is a color and material board here. It has a stone veneer, a metal panel that cuts through the building to add some contrast and color, which would be blue, LED lighting, which would frame that metal blade, and then enhancements at the ground floor to complement the hotel. Here is just another plan for some context of the proposed project. The building at the first photo on top is the relocated structure, which actually will be used for a restaurant, and the building below will also be used as a restaurant. The applicant at this time hasn't fully prepared their floor plans in order to move forward with any conditional use permits required for an establishment selling alcoholic beverages. So once they've worked that out, they'll come back to you for approvals of a conditional use permit or review of a conditional use permit. The alterations to the historic structures will be reviewed by the Historic Resources Commission prior to City Council review of the zone change. And this table here are the development standards of the Community Commercial Zoning District. The project complies with the lot size requirements, side setback requirements, rear setback requirements, building height, landscape, and landscaping requirements. There are variances requested for front setbacks, signage, wall heights, and off-street parking, which I will get into later in the presentation. So in order to construct this project that I've just gone over, there are several entitlements that are needed. The first one is the amendment application, which is a zone change. The property currently has two zoning designations. On the west side, it's zoned C1MD, and on the east side, it's zoned professional. Since we're reviewing this comprehensively, we would be changing the entire property to be consistent, which is community commercial, with the museum district overlay. The conditional use permit for the hotel is a standard practice for hotels in our city. We are in support of the hotel use with the CUP in place, and there are conditions of approval which require a public art plan and a parking management plan. And the project's also consistent with our design standards, with the exception of a few minor changes due to site constraints. So now I'm going to get into the variances. The first variance is a variance for off-street parking. A parking analysis was prepared by RK Engineering and provided as an attachment to the staff report. It was prepared early in the development review process for this project, and that was prior to a zoning ordinance amendment that was recently adopted that you guys are aware of. And with that zoning ordinance amendment, we did change some parking standards to be more business friendly. And so the parking standards that are referenced within that study are our previous standards, which were more conservative, had higher rates than what we would require right now. The parking requirements for the proposed project are listed below on this table, and I can get into the exact standards and how they break down with the multiple uses on this site if needed. But the main conclusion of the parking study and the main point to focus on is that the peak number of parking spaces for this proposed project would be 120 spaces. And as proposed, there are 126 parking spaces on the site. So there would be sufficient parking for both of the uses to operate, and we do feel that that parking study staff can support. So the front yard variance is a variance to the front setback standards required within the zoning district is 15 feet, and as proposed, one of the historic structures would be 7 feet. The staff supports this variance. If you travel Main Street, you're aware that the majority of the buildings are placed close to Main Street with a 0 street setback, so this would be consistent with that corridor and promote the commercial uses and also highlight the hotel for anyone that is traveling along and looking for a place to stay. In regards to the wall height variance, the requirement is 4 feet within the front setback, and it's proposed to be 7 feet 6 inches as measured from curb. There are some grade differences on the site, so when looking from the interior of the site, the wall height would be reduced. And the wall is required because of the location of the pool deck. Building code requires a 4-foot wall around the pool deck, and so a wall is requested there, and also to provide some privacy and screening for patrons. And then to match that wall, just south of that, between the two historic structures, would be the same wall, but would also have a mural on it as part of their public art plan. The last variance would be for wall signs. The sign code provides or allows for 2 wall signs, and the applicant is proposing 4 signs, 1 per elevation, and this is due to the fact that the building will be highly visible. It's 6 stories in height. You can see it from all directions, and this provides additional signage for the applicant and also supports the use of a hotel for anyone traveling and maybe not familiar with the area and looking for a place to stay. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the proposed project. There is a mitigation monitoring plan, and with that mitigation, there are no areas of significant impact for this. In addition, a traffic study was prepared and reviewed by the city's traffic engineer, and we came to the same conclusions as the traffic report. So with that, staff recommends a variety of actions for for Planning Commission's approval and recommends City Council approval. And that concludes the staff report. The city's CEQA environmental consultant who prepared the mitigated negative declaration is here. The applicant's traffic consultant, RK Engineering, is here, who prepared the traffic analysis and the parking analysis, and the applicant is here and available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Selena. Does the commission have any questions of staff? Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so I understand, the city owns, in addition to the parking lot, they actually own the 4 parcels to the south of the parking lot.
Are you speaking of the restaurant structures and
Where the historic structures
those are not city-owned properties? The applicant has acquired those properties or is acquiring them from private property owners.
Okay, so it's separate. Okay. And then, let's see. Sorry. So as far as the parking study, there were some numbers that were kind of off. That doesn't, in staff's opinion, impact the overall assessment of what the parking study was trying to accomplish? Because I think it was off by like 2 spaces as to what's provided, but there was a little bit of difference in the calculation of what the staff report said was required without any variances versus what the parking study or what the consultants came up with. So after seeing those 2 numbers, which one's right?
Yeah, sorry for the confusion with that. The traffic study was prepared earlier in the process by the applicant, and so it references our old standards and a previous site plan as well, which was, and so now what's reflected in the staff report that there's 121 spaces, and 61 spaces required is the number that's required currently under our current codes, and the applicant's proposing 126 spaces.
And that's not the 194 that I guess probably included the parking that would have been required for the historic structures.
Correct.
Okay. And then the municipal code actually allows for shared parking studies. But if I read it correctly, maybe I didn't, it said something about minor variances. Does this parking variance qualify as a minor variance? And what's the threshold for a minor parking variance?
So we utilize that section for minor exceptions and also for variances. Since this project was coming before you, rather than having it go to the zoning administrator, it would be for the Planning Commission's decision.
Okay, so normally this particular instance would go there, but so what's the threshold? What constitutes a minor?
20%, and they're at 22%.
Okay, and then and then my last question is, so on the conditions, I noticed that police imposed one condition, and it was referencing one provision of the Muni Code, Building Security Ordinance, whereas our next project, and I don't want to get into the weeds on the next project, but let's just say there's a couple more conditions from PD, and I'm just kind of curious, did PD review this, or is that just a standard condition?
That is a standard condition, and it is standard that the police department actually does review all of our development projects through our DRC process. And so they did review the hotel project and then place their standard conditions.
So they felt that this was the only condition they needed to impose?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any other questions of Selena?
Chairman.
Lynette?
Selena, so just for clarification, I think I'm on the right track. But so the historic buildings will be moved up to Maine. That one will be the bar, one will be the restaurant, but they don't require any parking because of the historic nature of the buildings.
That is correct.
So these two do not require any parking. So all of the parking spaces are all hotel.
Yeah.
Are on the hotel property.
So the exact code language is that we can't require, or we do not require any additional parking prior to what was legally there before. And so I can go over what was there before, but it was 12 spaces. And so the hotel requires 149 spaces, and the use of the two historic buildings would be 12 spaces. So when you add those together, it's 161. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Phil?
I have one more question. So in the MND, I didn't see anything that addressed the fact that the parking that's there now that serves various residents and businesses is going away. 93 spaces, which I was shocked that that site could hold 93. But I didn't see anything in the MND. Maybe I overlooked it. But was there a portion where it actually analyzed what that impact would be?
So the MND analyzes the traffic and transportation that's associated with the uses of the subject property. So it relates to level of service, and that's typically studied at intersections. And the thought is that any trips that would have been going to the public parking lot would be for the adjacent nearby either residence or business uses, and so that would have been captured in existing conditions. Any new trips are specific to just this hotel use.
Right. No, I understand that the LOS and all that sort of stuff is focused on the project that's being proposed. But what I'm saying is that you're losing something. You know, it'd be like if we knocked down the historic building, there would be a CEQA analysis saying, oh my goodness, you're losing this historic structure, and let's analyze the impact. So I guess my just simple question is they didn't analyze the loss of the spaces. They only analyzed what the new project's impact would be from a level of service and traffic analysis.
Right, from an environmental standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
And the traffic consultant could probably speak in more detail to that, and also the CEQA consultant.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to just qualify, because I'm still a little bit fuzzy on this. All of the standards that we have that establish the 161, all of those standards are in place today, and that is what we are working to at this moment. They're not proposed, they're all working standards at this point in time.
That is correct. These are our current standards.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That answers my question.
The zoning ordinance amendment that made the modification to the historic, any parking for historic structures was in effect October 19th or 20th, so it's fairly recent.
Okay. So it takes in, just so we got it, takes in the historic structures, but it actually takes in the fact that they are restaurants, or it takes it in as a historic structure?
Historic structure.
So it's going to be less than what it would be if it were a restaurant, which is going to be a restaurant.
Correct.
Okay, I want to clarify that because that is that's a difference of interpretation of the rule on this particular item. Okay. And it also includes the fact that is the standard changed for it was one space per room plus one for every 10 rooms?
That's always been our hotel parking
and that's
standard.
Still a standard. And that is for rooms and for employees.
Correct. That rate is supposed to account for employees as well. That's
Okay.
standard with all of our commercial uses where you would have employees and also people visiting the business. We don't define employees for restaurant uses or anything like that. And then also in regards to the use of the multiple uses on the site, many of the people that are going to be utilizing this restaurant are hopefully hotel guests that would be eating there, so they would already have their car parked there. Hotel uses also can utilize ride share products or applications, Uber, taxi, if they're in the nearby area for business, they don't have a rental car and they're just using that to get back and forth from the airport.
Okay, but in all due respect, that's part of the parking study.
Correct.
That has nothing, and it's part of the parking studies. From a staff point of view, you're discussing standards.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't want to get confused on that one. All right. Any other questions of Beatrice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From my short time being on the commission, I feel like I'm still learning, but this is the first time that I see some numbers that are a result of the peak parking demand. Has the city in the past done any peak parking demand studies, for example?
Staff has not done any studies. We require those of the applicants, and they come in to give us analysis of the parking requirements for the project. So that's, again, subject to the applicant providing that information to us. We peer review it to be sure it's accurate, and we compare it with ULI standards for how it's done to verify the information, but the studies are from the applicants.
Mr. Chair, on that note, but you have an environmental consultant for the city. So you, typically, I assume the applicant pays the city for the environmental to be conducted, but then any sort of, let's call it feeder studies that go into the M&D, like the traffic, if there was noise or anything of that nature, then the applicant is taking care of those on their own.
They will take care of those separate studies. They get turned into our consultant who peer reviews those studies to be sure they're accurate.
Okay, thank you.
And then we also have Public Works will take a look at any traffic and parking stuff as well for us.
Okay.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, Selena, thank you. Would the applicant at this point in time like to comment on this item?
I'd like to defer to let the public, seeing how they're here to speak, I'd like to let them speak first. Is that all right, Chair?
It's okay. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication on this item?
Yes, all communication has been distributed to the commission.
Okay, thank you. We will now open this to the public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out a request to speak from the Secretary. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We have approximately 10. I just want to make one point here. Jesse Evans, you gave me 2. You get 1. William Diaz, you gave me 2. You get 1. Okay? Just make it clear. All right, thank you. Having said that, the first person is Dale Halvick.
Good evening, Commissioner McLaughlin's commissioners and staff. You guys have already answered some of the questions that I had, so I appreciate that, but I would like to address some of the things that still are confusing to me. One is the traffic or the parking study did address the old numbers and everything else, but their conclusion was still the same, 128. They based it upon 194 or whatever. You drop that limit down to 161, but their recommendation from the study was still 128. The other thing is North Bush Street. It appears that North Bush Street will actually be shortened to accommodate the turnaround. I didn't see that addressed in the study at all. And also the rezoning. You said that the applicant is purchasing a couple homes to create this development, but yet only professional office zoning and the C1 zoning were being affected. It looks like it's also impacting residential zoning if they're buying 2 properties with houses on it. Also, the parking. One of the things that is brought up is Public Works needs to approve prior to building permits, provide restriping, curb marking, and signage to allow parallel street parking adjacent to the south curb on Buffalo. I feel this would not be in the city's best interest. As you know, Buffalo is the main thoroughfare to the I-5 freeway, and restriping of this street to add 10 parking spots I think would be detrimental to the citizens that are trying to get out of their car and put them at risk. Also, my last comment is I would like to commend the Net Development Company on their transparency regarding the Sunshine Ordinance meeting notes. They set a high standard by hiring a court reporter, and it says a lot on their project, I think. Whereas the Sunshine Ordinance meeting notes for a 2525 Main Street development are pathetic. The 2525 Main Street development is written to support their position and their position only and does not reflect community input into the meeting. And I hope that you hold that organization accountable when they come before you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Alan Van de Voort.
Well, good evening. I'm Alan Van de Voort. I lived in the city of Santa Ana for, I don't know, maybe 15 years now. I own property actually diagonal to the proposed project at 2129 North Main. I own 2202 North Main all the way through to 2220 North Main. I own on Santa Clara 18-unit building, 5-unit building, a 3-unit building, and then I own a house at 107 West Buffalo Street, which is pretty much behind, just down the street from Buffalo and Main Street. Over the years, the city has basically removed parking that I had at one time at 2202, which is right on the corner, 2202 North Main. It's right on the corner of Buffalo and Main Street, diagonally across from the proposed hotel. The city has removed parking from that building by widening Main Street and taking away diagonal parking. And then when they converted a two-way Buffalo to basically 4 lanes now, they also removed parking off of Buffalo on both sides. So when the public parking went in, it was very helpful to not only me, but many of the businesses around the area. I don't have any parking at this building because of the city's removal of parking. I've been relying on the parking across the way for, well, not only the building at 2202, but I have a chiropractor and he has, just different events and so forth. They use that overflow parking over there. I also I go with my buildings quite often, and I've noticed that pretty much any one time there's about 60 to 70 cars, sometimes more, utilizing that parking spot, a parking lot across the way. And I've gone so far as to follow some of the people that, because I was curious where they're going. I mean, where are these people going? They go as far as Buffalo, down Buffalo to Broadway, down businesses on both right and left on Broadway, all the way from that parking lot, all the way to businesses over there, and also across the street to the credit union. There's a lot of people that use that parking lot, and I'm sure that the turnover number of cars exceeds 100 cars, and I don't know how many people. So more than 100 easily. So that parking lot is used by a lot of different people. Removal of the parking lot would impact the neighborhood, would impact the businesses in the neighborhood, and would impact the residences in the neighborhood. Because there's basically, if you ever gone down Bush Street is a street parallel to Main Street, next street over. That is hardly any parking at all. That's entirely packed with cars. There's just no parking on Bush Street at all. So now I guess the question is wherever the people go that utilize this parking, wherever they go, there's no parking in the neighborhood.
Alan, can you finish up?
I'm sorry?
You're at 3 minutes, please.
Oh, am I? Oh, okay. I just want to say that real quick. I want to say that I say that the congestion and the traffic and the congestion, I've been there a lot because I've owned property in the neighborhood for just 1999. The congestion in that corner of Main Street and Buffalo, right in there, with the northbound and the southbound 5 freeways attached to Main Street, that's incredible congestion and traffic as it is right now. Put in a hotel there would further complicate things in a road situation it is right now. And I'm asking the Planning Commission to require further studies. And I'm asking the plan, which includes up to and including the environmental impact report. Okay, thank you.
Ellen Diamond.
My name is Ellen Diamond. I live at 202 West 19th Street. I've lived in Santa Ana for almost 20 years. I live down the street from where this hotel will be. My neighborhood will be adversely impacted by this hotel because it'll take away the parking lot. We already have overnight parking permit on our street because people on Bush were parking on our street overnight, and so we didn't have any place to park our cars at night. So now there'll be more people coming over to our side of the street to try to look for parking. Also, it looks like from when I look at the plans that if you get off the freeway, either going north or south, the only way to get into the hotel is to turn left from Main, which there's no real way to do that without creating a lot. It seems like it's going to just create a lot of traffic jams and possibly accidents. And I know you have your traffic studies done, and they come and they look, but they're just there at one point in time. I mean, we live here all the time, and we know what the traffic is like, and it's always very congested. And the more traffic on Main means more traffic on Broadway, means more traffic through the neighborhoods as people try to avoid Main and Broadway. And that is an adverse effect on the quality of life of the people. So I am asking also that you require an environmental impact report to really see what kind of impact this hotel will have on the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Diane Ashborough.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I'm speaking today because of the impact of removing the parking in that parking lot. I'm concerned that parking in our neighborhoods is already very limited, and I live on the same street as Ellen, and we had to get parking permits so that we could park by our houses at night. I'm fortunate I have a driveway at my house, but people are trying to get in during the day to go to the museum, go to the wooden floor ballet. They park right up to my driveway. I've had to call parking enforcement because I can't even get out of my driveway. And unfortunately, I know parking enforcement has a lot that they have to deal with, but there have been times where they've actually suggested I drive across my front yard to try to exit my driveway, which does not work. So I'm concerned about that. And in the presentation that was put forward, all the pictures showing that parking lot showed it at about, looked like 70% filled with community using that parking lot. So you take that away, where are those people going to park? And where they're going to come to my neighborhood, which is fine because it is public parking on our street, but it's already impacted now with having access to that parking lot on Bush. So I too feel that we need a full environmental impact report to find out exactly what's going to happen if this project goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Bob Lockhead.
Good evening. My name is Bob Lockhead. I'm the operator of Hollybrook Senior Living, which is an assisted living community located a half block from the proposed project on Bush Street. We care for pretty close to 100 aging seniors, and we're trying to provide love and affordable care for the elderly in the city of Santa Ana. My main concern this evening is the parking that is going away and not being replaced, the 93 spaces. We have family members, staff, and visiting medical professionals that have grown to expect that parking to be available in order to care for the elderly and to visit the elderly. A concern that I also have is that one of the leading causes of physical decline in senior citizens is loneliness. The inability of family members to visit their loved ones, I believe, will prompt a decline in health for the nearly 100 residents that live at Hollybrook, and I'm very concerned about that. I'm asking the Commission to consider the fact that the street is already at capacity, that there is not replacement parking proposed anywhere that I can see in any of the reports, and I'd like to ask for a further review. I'd like to see data that is accurate and consistent. There's inconsistencies in the data across reports. Understanding of the impact of losing the 90 spaces and having that be made clear and transparent, as well as a thoughtful review that includes all of the stakeholders involved. I too, as well as others have said, believe that a full environmental impact report is needed on this, and therefore I am requesting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jess Evans.
Hello. My family and I, we live at the residence on North Bush Street, 2057. We're at the end of the street. We'll actually be the one house looking directly at your project. So I'm going to be direct. I'm not going to add a bunch of language. I'm just going to be very literal. We don't want to live in a cul-de-sac. If the cul-de-sac was pre-existing, we would have never moved into the neighborhood. Our home is already up against the freeway wall. We have no backyard. Until we encapsulate our front yard, we don't have a backyard. We have never parked in front of our home in 3 years. We've never had a guest to our home in 3 years. Numerous times I've contemplated calling the police because people service themselves, whether it's pizza people, whatever it takes to deliver goods to the clients that live across the street. They park in front of our house all the time. I got picture evidence, video evidence of that happening all day. Other than the fact that we don't want to live in a cul-de-sac, nor do we want to look at the peak of a building. We moved in a neighborhood to live in a neighborhood. We were under the assumption that the zoning that we moved into would protect our interests. That apparently isn't correct. I don't know if any of you have anything artistic as far as your skill sets, but I'm writing a book from my bedroom window. I don't want to listen to construction for 7 months. I don't want to look at the hotel peak for the rest of my life. That also includes the fact that if we don't like the project and the change in the neighborhood, when it comes time to sell our home, you're taking away 2 vintage homes that are going to affect our property directly and also ruin the aesthetic value of what we're looking at. As far as the residents that live in our home, we think Santa Ana is just punching us in the gut. You're leaving us with a possibility of losing a ton of value on our property and also ruin our view, let alone the impact of the traffic. And it's not just traffic and parking and such. You're putting the neighborhood under so much stress that you're taking a river, which is the parking lot, and acting like it's a pond, and then all that impact is being forced back into our neighborhood or where else, I have no idea. The primary concerns about it's going to affect the neighborhood and also destroy the aesthetic value, noise impact, bounce off the building. Our house is deeply impacted by noise. So the last two and most important things to us is that now that our neighborhood is being changed, when it comes time to possibly sell a property, if we don't like what's being done, what happens if we can't? What happens if nobody wants to live with that cul-de-sac, that hotel building, and pay current market value for our home? So, being everything that they said, plus what I'm saying, this project can't happen at all. Especially for us as a homeowner. I didn't move into a neighborhood to look at a hotel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tanya Alana.
I'm Tanja Olano. I'm the executive director at Hollybrook. Hollybrook has been in the community for about 50 years. We provide affordable care for the elderly in Santa Ana. We currently have a census of about 79. These seniors all have family members who want to come visit, and they use that parking lot to come visit their family members. If you've ever been down Bush Street, you'll know that it's impossible to park there. I come in the morning at 7:30 and already it's just, they're as tight as you can get them in there. So any of these family members that are coming to visit have to park in that parking lot. We have some parking for them, but not enough for 79 people that are coming to visit. Not that they all show up at one time, but between all the different usage that we have, including staff and visiting medical, and that kind of thing, it really is going to impact us. If you had ever been on that street on a Tuesday, they have street cleaning in the mornings from like 8 to 12. It's like a circus around there. People just trying to drive around until the street cleaning is done and then come put their cars back real quick before somebody can take their spot. It's actually kind of hilarious if you're watching it. We ask that you do a comprehensive report that would include some more accurate data. We were dissatisfied with the level of review that we saw. We feel it's going to have an extensive impact on our surrounding neighborhood. We felt that you said the variance for parking was inconsequential, and we strongly disagree with that. That parking, I would say, during the day at least, if you go look, it's probably 70 to 80% full all the time. And we would ask that you would do a more comprehensive report and ask that you do a full environmental impact report. We would ask that you provide us with more information from all stakeholders, and also, give us more time to review the information that was released, because some of it was released at the very last minute and didn't give us much time to review, to give us time for a more comprehensive argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Max Rollins.
Good evening, Commissioners. Max Rollins with Alston & Bird on behalf of Hollybrook Senior Living of Orange. Our firm submitted 2 letters for the record, one of which was just submitted today in response to the parking study that was first circulated only last Friday. I just want to briefly summarize our concerns with you now. First, as you know, the city has opted to prepare a mitigated negative declaration, not an environmental impact report. But the courts have held that an MND is only appropriate where there is no, quote, fair argument, end quote, that a project may have a significant effect on the environment. This is a low threshold, and a decision to proceed with an MND will only be upheld where there is no credible evidence of a significant environmental impact. Second, nothing in the record here analyzes, let alone provides evidence, that there will be no significant impacts associated with the loss of parking from converting the existing lot, which currently provides the 93 spots, to a hotel. And while parking impacts are not considered direct impacts under CEQA, CEQA also requires that indirect and secondary impacts be analyzed. This includes the loss of parking here, which would cause significant indirect and secondary impacts as drivers on local streets circle around and look for parking. And even with the only 24 hours that we had to review the project's parking study, which again was not part of the MND and was not part of the city's file as of last Tuesday when we reviewed it, it's plainly deficient. Perhaps most importantly, nowhere does the parking study analyze the loss of the 93 spots. It's also highly questionable whether the use of the mixed-use reduction is appropriate here. The ULI's shared parking analysis is generally used for large mixed-use projects, shopping centers on several acres. It's generally not used for a moderately sized hotel with traditionally accessory uses of a restaurant and a bar. Staff's mitigation, if you want to call it that, to require the applicant pay for the striping of 10 spots was not analyzed and is therefore deficient under CEQA. And the proposed parking management plan, which has not been circulated, wouldn't fix the problem of having too few spots. Third, these problems spill over to the requested variance, and we request that you recommend the variance be denied until these issues can be fully analyzed. So really at bottom, the answer here is to prepare an EIR, which would allow full public participation and offer a chance to fully consider these issues. As we've heard tonight from many members of your community, they use the existing parking lot, and removing it would cause significant impacts on the community. We urge this commission to require an EIR be prepared, but at minimum, you should continue the decision to allow additional time for the public to consider the traffic study that was only just released on Friday. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Max. William Diaz.
Hello and good afternoon, members of Santa Ana Planning Commission. My name is William Diaz, and I would like to start with some background information. I have resided in Santa Ana, specifically the Santa Ana Triangle, for 23 years, and I have witnessed the changes in my community, both good and bad. The proposed project on 2129 North Main Street will occupy the existing parking lot used by members of the community and local business owners. My first question is, and I would like to note that I fully understand you may not answer my question in this setting, but would like this to be on record. What was the reason of building the current parking lot? What was the issue it was made to accommodate? And what study shows the issue is no longer present? 2129 is a P-zone professional district with set building height regulations. Section 41314 states no building shall exceed 35 feet. The Hampton is estimated at 65 feet. As it states in the public notice, the proposed project is requesting a conditional use permit with the variance and deviations from off-street parking. Section 411344, Division 3, states the minimum parking requirements for hotels is 1 space for each guest room and 1 space for each 10 rooms. Additionally, Section B goes into further detail for restaurants and other retail services. The project currently provides, and these numbers may differ because of the new information provided, 126 spaces, which is a 30% reduction from the 178 stalls it is required to provide. In accordance with Santa Ana parking statutes, this does not make for a good neighbor. The removal of public parking not only will have a direct impact on my community, but it will also impact those in the vicinity of the parking who rely on it for visitation of family members and/or carpool to work. Upon review of the MIR provided by Kevin Coleman and Net Development Company, it is stated the deviation of parking is inconsequential. Members of Santa Ana Planning Commission, when considering the amount of apartment complexes on Bush Street, does this sound inconsequential to you? What is the impetus to approve this project? Now is the time for transparency. Now is the time when we hold potential businesses to city and environmental statutes. As a concerned member of the directly impacted community, I request a full environmental impact report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, William. Does anyone else at this point in time have any public comments that they'd like to make? Hearing none, we'll close the public comments and bring it back to the applicant. Sorry.
Let the applicant respond.
I said we'll bring it back to the applicant.
Good job.
Thank you. All right.
Good job,
We got to get the best out of this group here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for hearing this tonight. My name is Kevin Coleman. I am the applicant on this project. I bring it before you tonight to be able to review and discuss the issues that have been brought up here. I appreciate the community coming out and seeing this. I appreciate the first gentleman stating that I tried my best to be transparent in the sunshine. I had a court recorder record every word that they could get, even though it was in a room with a lot of people talking at one time, but we tried our best. The project itself, there's a lot of confusion. The project is, the entire Bush Street is publicly zoned for professional offices. A lot of Bush Street is already professional offices. With Hollybrook on the street, that's a professional office. They also have a parking variance that was granted to them in the initial operations of that building. The benefit of what we're doing is taking all of our traffic off of Bush Street. Bush Street currently goes, it is a cul-de-sac, it's designed as a cul-de-sac, but it transmits through a public parking lot when the parking lot was built. That actually has a chain across it and can be closed at any time that it so desires, thus creating the cul-de-sac. So if you could put up the existing, because I want to make the comment about someone looking at my hotel. If you look at the residence that was spoke to, there is no building that looks to my property at all. Everything looks to the apartment complex that's existing there. From the end of Bush Street, the last house on Bush Street on the east side, that is freeway fence from Caltrans. Nothing that looks out. The Bush Street home that I intend to move onto Main Street, that looks at a 12-foot freeway fence. It does not look at another home. The other home that would be removed, that also looks at a freeway fence. So the replacement of that cul-de-sac that is currently in its location actually shortens Bush Street and puts it so that less traffic is put onto Bush Street. The issues of zoning, the hotel is actually sitting in the commercial zone. The back half of the property is the professional zone. So none of the property that I am developing is actually in that zone at all that has the height restriction. It is all in the front commercial side. I believe the city is just rezoning it so that there's consistency for the total site. I was trying to cover all the notes just so that I covered everything. The issue of the property across the street that was spoke to, I didn't remove any of those parking stalls, and I didn't build any of those buildings that are underparked by code. The people that are going down to the properties on Broadway are going to properties that are also underparked. Not anything that my development creates or anything that anybody at this diocese created. They are the conditions that they are. And trying to put additional 10 parking stalls on Bush Street, that was a request that was made of me. I agreed to accomplish that. There is also a public parking lot south of us that contains about 21 stalls, I think, that is 4 lots south of our property. That is also a city-owned parking lot that's just not very well marked that it's a public parking lot. So to that, I stand ready to answer any questions that this body might have of me, and would love to answer them for you.
Any commissioners have any questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman.
Ed?
Could you tell me how many employees you plan to hire to work for the hotel?
There'll probably be 35 to 40 employees in there, most of which will come from the local neighborhoods and transmit by community transportation. Our hotel in Azusa literally has 3 cars that come with the employees. The rest of them all come on public transportation.
That's what my next question is, where your employee plan to park. Are they going to park with the proposed parking space you're going to build at the hotel? Because I can see here on the report that the ordinance required 149 parking spaces for the hotel, approximately 29 parking spaces for the restaurant, both restaurants. So bring the total 178 parking spaces. And you propose a request for a variance for 128 parking spaces, with like 50 parking spaces less than the code required. So my calculation, about 28% that request for parking spaces required by.
I appreciate that you're bringing that up. Actually, by code, the restaurant and the bar facilities could be inside that hotel, still requiring the parking requirement to only be one stall per room plus 10 additional. So all of that could be inside the hotel and be perfectly legal. The purpose of the 2 historical homes, I acquired the property to the south, and they are historically rated. They were put into the Mills Act approximately 3 years ago. In light of that, we've chosen to say, okay, we'll be good citizens and keep those homes. Those 2 apparatuses will occupy stuff that would have been inside the hotel, which then would have reduced the parking back down to the one stall per room and the 10 additional stalls, with all the same services being provided inside the hotel. I just didn't have that luxury because the real estate that I acquired ended up having the historical homes on it. Right. And thus, I'm trying to salvage them, utilize them, and keep that as part of the history of our city.
Can you tell me how many parking spaces currently in the city-owned parking lot with the property you acquired to build the hotel? How many current parking spaces is there now?
I honestly cannot tell you. I've never counted it. I don't believe I've ever counted it. I think there's 60 some out there, but I've not sat out there and counted them. I've heard tonight the statement made that there's 90. I'm not sure that that's true.
I applaud your effort to build hotels in our city, because if build hotels, it will be added revenue for the city for bed taxes and so on. But I think I would possibly recommend if you should build some sort of a parking structure for your own hotel guests as well, for the community member, that to replace existing public parking currently took over by your hotel. So it could be added financial interest for the hotel, because it would be a public parking. You can get revenue from it as well, and also to satisfy the need of the parkings that needed for the public as well, for your hotel guests.
I fully respect that comment, but the reality is if the economics of that do not pencil and it does not make sense to do such, that is a non-charged lot today. The city's never seen fit to go in there and charge for that parking. The city also, just for the record, is who approached me to buy this real estate. I did not come to solicit the city to buy this. I was given a tour in 2015 along with, I think, 12 or 13 other properties in the city, both city-owned and not city-owned, looking to bring developers to generate revenue and income to the city. This project basically generates $1 million a year in TOT tax and reduced expenditures that is on the city's budget today to maintain that parking lot, of which is no longer being maintained, hence the approval to sell it to me. So the drug paraphernalia, the things that are going on out there are getting worse. My own people go out to pick up the mess because no one else is doing that. And so it's to see that a project like this could be burdened with a public parking lot, it would make no economic sense. And If that had been brought to my attention when the property was shown to me, I'd have never made an offer to buy it.
Thank you.
So, do you have the answer to the question on the parking?
93 spaces for the city parking lot.
93.
Okay, that's what I thought. Cynthia?
I have a quick question. I noticed in the Sunshine notes in the report, it said that the parking for the hotel is just for the hotel folks. If I was going to the restaurant, would I be able to park in that lot, or do I have to find a spot somewhere else?
No, I consider the restaurant, the 2 facility buildings that are adjacent to the hotel, as all part of the hotel. So that is all hotel property, and based on request by Councilman Salario, we have added a gate on that property so that that would all be completed for the use of the hotel and the ancillary buildings.
So then guests will always be able to find a parking spot?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I actually have a question for staff. One of the speakers brought up the issue of the traffic study and when it was circulated. I heard Friday, but wasn't it part of the MND when it was circulated during its comment period?
Yes.
The traffic study was included as part of the MND, which was released for public review, consistent with the Environmental Quality Act standards, which is 30 days, and so
Right.
that was prior to this meeting. It's been available for 30 days.
So when was it? When was the circulation period? When was that 30-day period?
November 11th, I believe.
What was that?
November 11th.
Okay, thank you.
So my question,
sorry,
hold on. Unfortunately, public comments are closed. This is now a conversation with the applicants.
Did he get his 3 minutes, or does he get to go?
With the applicant, because the applicant has questions, we have questions of the applicant, we're allowed to go beyond 3 minutes.
Just wanted to clarify my comments on the parking study.
Again, in all due respect, the public comments have closed at this point in time. So I just want to be clear on that, and at least let us get through this next step, okay? Phil, did you have a question for Cynthia? My one question is was the question about the availability of a traffic study, or was it the availability of the parking study? Because I think from the standpoint of what I believe Max brought up, he mentioned traffic study, and I'm not sure whether you meant parking study, which was available only as of this past Friday. So did we have a traffic study?
Yes, the traffic study was an attachment to the MND, and it is, I do want to correct myself, it was released on November 10th for public viewing. The parking study is an attachment to the staff report and was included as an attachment to the staff report consistent with all of our public viewings, so it was available on Thursday. And I provided Max, or their firm, with a copy of the staff report at that time.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, real quick. So the parking study that was in our staff report, parking, that was not available until Friday?
Thursday.
Or Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Phil? Any other questions of the applicant at this point in time? Thank you.
If I could just state, the reports that were spoke of, sound studies, all of those were all turned in months ago when we started this process, and they were done for sound and noise and everything else. My engineer is here. If you have any questions of the engineer and the CEQA people are here too.
If we're going to bring that question up or something of that nature.
I have a question of staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Selena, so who determined that there was not a significant enough of a impact of removing those 93 parking spaces to not require an environmental impact report? How did that happen?
That's all part of the mitigated negative declaration, and there are specific questions that are asked for a project, which are within the document. There's 6 of them, which do not speak specifically to parking. Any secondary impacts to parking could be analyzed, but at this point, that's not considered significant for the project. So the questions that are posed in CEQA do not relate specifically to parking. It's transportation and traffic.
Okay.
So,
There are set questions within the CEQA guidelines.
okay, I got it. I just wanted to make a comment. So, when was this picture taken? Do you know that's up on the board? The aerial. Does anyone know when that was taken? The only reason why is it looks like it might have been during the daytime because traffic on the freeway is fairly light, which would never happen during peak hours. So I'm thinking that might be either weekend or daytime. And if you look at the parking lot, you see a significant amount of cars parked in that parking lot at this time. So I just wanted to make that comment because I was wondering what time that aerial, if anybody knows when that was taken.
I don't have that information. It's from our GIS system, so I don't have the exact date and time.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question of Tay, Public Works.
Got it right.
There was a question brought up from one of the individuals in the audience, and the question was, what was the purpose of the parking lot when it was originally made into a parking lot? Because originally it was a remnant from the Caltrans 5 widening, and that's what that was, remnant land. And the city took it over I think it was at the beginning of 2001.
When the city took it over, it would have been about that time. That's about right. I think it was in maybe around 2005 when it was converted to a parking lot.
Right.
Specifically, I don't know why. I do know it was about at the same time that the Bowers expansion was happening.
Right.
And so it is possible it was there as a temporary measure until the Bowers parking lot was fully developed.
But it was also one of the designated items was that it would be a Bowers parking lot, and it would be a parking lot for their employees as well as for people coming to the museum, and that's the reason why the parking lot was actually built.
Yeah, and I don't have any more specific information about that, about whether that was the case.
Chairman, that is correct.
That's
that was
correct.
why it was built, because if you recall that the Bowers Museum expanded northern into a parking lot they had and reduced their parking, and therefore they bought that Caltrans and parcel in order to provide overflow parking and employee parking for the Bowers Museums during special events. But because I believe it was funded under some special funds, it was designated as a public parking lot, but it was mainly intended to be for the Bowers use.
Correct. Thank you.
Actually,
Phil?
Jag, don't
Phil?
mind, just real quick. So on the parking on Buffalo, will that be free parking or will that be metered parking if everything goes forward as planned?
The expectation we have is that would be free parking.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to speak to that. One of the speakers referenced it. Right now that's 2 lanes eastbound, Buffalo between Broadway and Main, and the width of that street allows for very wide lanes right now, and so there's plenty of space to get parking in there. And I know the speaker was concerned. My impression, he was concerned about cars being able to exit there and have the visibility, and so we would certainly take that into account.
Thank you.
Okay, the other question I have, if this goes back to staff, and I think we discussed this in a pre-meeting, but I'd like to discuss that again, that a number of the properties that we were talking about, especially the healthcare facility, was in place or not in place before the parking lot came about.
The senior living facility has been in place since the 70s, so it was in place prior to the parking lot, public parking lot.
So all of the parking and the variances associated with parking and everything else didn't take into consideration that there was a 93 parking spaces on that end.
Correct.
Okay.
It did not.
Okay. Thank you. Beatrice?
I have a question for Tanya, the Executive Director of Hollybrook. In the report on the day of the Sunshine Ordinance, I think someone that, I'm not sure if he or she works there, but said that there's only 4 parking spaces for you and a total of employees of 30. Is that correct? And
No, we have, how many do you have? 20 spaces? We have about 20 spaces.
Okay, so someone just might have made a comment. Okay. And so where do your medical professionals and families park?
For the most part, we try to save that parking for them. And so the rest of us try to either use that parking lot or, there are some that come by other means, but for the most part, most of us try to park there to leave that available for the family members.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this point in time? Okay. Do I have a motion to consider item number 5?
Should we close the public hearing?
We closed it.
All right, good. Actually,
That's
I'd
why
like
we
to.
brought it back to the applicant.
Okay, well, I'd like to, I just have a couple of comments on this before we get into any motions. First of all, thank you, Kevin. I'm glad you expressed interest in this when the city put this out there. I'm glad that you jumped in there. I know that you have a wealth of experience in this arena, so I was happy to see that you were involved with this project. And yes, you did set the bar for transparency. Oh my goodness, I was hoping to see a couple of pages. Yikes, that caught me. So yes, very thorough, so good job. But what this project reminds me of though, is what we have at 3rd and Broadway. We have a parking structure that exists, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we're looking collectively as a city to have a hotel come in there, but also have parking that's already there. So in other words, we would have the hotel, whatever parking is required for the hotel, and the parking that exists today, because we didn't want to lose that parking for the businesses in the downtown. Is that correct?
Yes, we're still going through the whole negotiations, but there may be a chance that we would reduce the amount of public parking out there.
But there would be some sort of accommodation.
Some city parking would be out there, yes.
I mean, I don't even want to be at the hearing that would have the project come forward and we tell the rest of downtown that we're just going to lose a structure's worth of parking. So to me, I think that it's a challenge on that site as it is, but we are getting rid of 93 spots, and as Commissioner Verino pointed out, that aerial shows a light time. It's not exactly rush hour and people are all packed in there. I mean, it seems significantly full. So I too have a concern about the loss of the parking. I do feel that there should be more review when it comes to the parking, but I disagree in regards to an EIR though. I think that's a little out there. I think you could probably address that with further studies in the MND, but nonetheless, to what the speakers asked for, I think it would accomplish that. And the idea that it would be further vetting, it would be publicly reviewed. So I don't want to jump into the EIR realm. I do think it should require some study. And I know staff has been sticking to what CEQA asks for, and that's great. But I think sometimes we need to venture outside of the CEQA bubble and say, hey, this is what's impacting the community. I mean, yes, you're checking all the boxes and you have to fulfill those minimal requirements, but we also have to look at what's out there. And the reality is, you take away that parking space, or those parking spaces, that community is impacted, whether it's the commercial, whether it's the institutional uses or the residents. So that's a reality, and we can't just glaze over that. Then we get into the parking variances. And, in fact, I was looking at the parking study, and it said for a conservative amount, you can go down to just simply a one space per bedroom or one space per hotel room. We don't even meet that with this proposal today. So forget let's just assume everybody, all the employees are transit oriented, or they all take Lyft or Uber. We still don't even accommodate that. And we're not going to be able to get into the restaurant, assuming that the rooms, we hope that the hotel is successful. We hope that the rooms are full. So if they are, then, you're not going to have parking there. Also too, I question the idea of the shared, what do we call it, the shared parking analysis. It doesn't make sense in this situation. It just doesn't. I mean, yes, there are different uses on the site, but in that same parking analysis, it says that the prime period, or the peak period, excuse me, is during June at 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends. Well, I mean, I can't imagine, there's going to be a difference where all the hotel folks will be gone one part of the day and the restaurant folks will be there just one part of the day. I see that commingling a lot, and I see those impacting each other. I don't see them as separate. And I know that we have the standard for the historic structures and we can't require more parking, or we don't require more parking, but that's just not reality. I mean, there's going to be a use in there that's more intensive, and we're not addressing it. Another concern of mine, this is my last concern, is we have one police condition in the analysis. The next project coming up has multiple. And I think that we have a problem property just on the other side of the 5 freeway. And one of my personal concerns is that, now I know the applicant is going to, whatever hotel he builds is going to be quality, but what happens afterwards? We're approving permits, not for the guy who's applying today, but who takes it on later on. And so my concern is, I don't want to see a Red Roof Inn 2.0. I don't want to see the same nuisances. I just don't. And I have too much respect for our PD to just kind of glaze over that and approve it as is. And I think that those conditions, or that one condition that PD put in there, I think just showed that there wasn't enough analysis, especially given the Red Roof Inn up the street. So, I am not going to throw a motion out there just yet. I would love to hear what my colleagues have to say, but I do have concerns. I want to see a hotel on the site. I really do. But I think maybe it needs some massaging. I think we need to really consider some issues that are being impacted here. But I do want to see a hotel. Again, I look at the parallels between 3rd and Broadway and what this site is, and it seems like we're doing two different approaches. And I feel like this site is far more difficult. At least with 3rd and Broadway, you got a nice, neat rectangle. Here you've got a very challenging site, and I appreciate that the applicant went out and purchased property and tried to do something creative with it. But I think for what's being currently proposed right now, it just seems like there's going to be a little bit of complications with that.
Cynthia?
I really like your comments, Phil, and I really like this project as well. I think that it would be a great improvement for that corridor of Main Street and a very nice complement to Bowers. I don't know if it's a possibility, but most parking lots in the city, you have to pay to park. I don't think all guests will be there during the day. It might be half empty. If you were able to allow folks to come, take a ticket and pay for it. No other, unless you're a guest, you're overnight. But I don't know if that's a possibility to allow that to happen. If you're there to do business or go see someone, it's the same thing being downtown. You have to pay for your parking. It's a reality. So if people were using that to park all day out of convenience, I understand that, but that's sometimes as good as it's going to last. But if you're there for business or anything that you need a spot, if it would be open to that option, I think that would be a win-win for everyone.
My understanding is that's written in the proposal. It says hotel, restaurants, and public. So therefore, the public would be charged for parking on the same level that the restaurant or the
so that
hotel
would be able to happen
so
as is?
That is in this proposal. So there is the ability to, public can come in and park their car and pay for that parking.
Okay, then.
Is that correct, Selena?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, then that satisfies my concern then.
Ken?
But I still have a problem with the issue with the parking, because I think you're looking at it, you replace the existing 93 parking space in the city parking lot with 128 new parking spaces will be built for the hotel use and as well the restaurant use. And if you compromise it's allowed to allow public parking at that facility, where are the hotel guests going to park? Because what we're looking at is only 32 more parking spaces than it is now. Not much more. So I think it possible, not economically or by financial, the meaningful for developer, but if it possible, create a parking structure that will be added more parking spaces and for public use, and as well for hotel guests. If the public coming in, they pay for it. But again, maybe not financially feasible for the developer to do that or not. But again, that could be. I think that will be a win-win situation for the project. I am strongly support any development of the hotels in our city because bring additional revenue for the city. But again, I'm a little concerned about the added inconvenience to the resident as well. The lack of parking will take away a lot of parking spaces for our resident and also the public use with the project.
Okay. Cynthia?
I think that part of this is a struggle because, from what I'm understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the city chose to sell that lot, correct?
Right.
Without thinking about those 93 parking spots and how they were going to be replaced. If our developer here today was approached, I think those are two separate issues. And I understand that something from the community was taken and it wasn't taken into account on how to continue to provide that need. So I think that's unfortunate that that wasn't thought about prior, and perhaps making it part of whoever bought that project to take that into consideration. But this, I don't know if this project didn't pass, if that's going to happen with the next developer. And are we going to be in the same place? I don't know. So those are just my thoughts.
Lynette?
I think that the hotel is going to bring huge economic value to the city, and the revenue we'll gain from it is tremendous. But I'm disturbed by the fact that we're displacing people from these parking stalls, whether it's customers to adjacent businesses or residents that have to deal with their streets already parked to capacity. I don't have a solution to it, but I really want to agree with Commissioner Becerra. I almost didn't remember your name. On his comments. I mean, I have the same exact concerns, and I don't know where to go with it at this point. But I really do think there's some further analysis, both from police and from city, to come up with what are our options for what's going to happen, and along with that, the hotel as well. I mean, I really think we're severely underparked for that project. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Beatrice?
I'm still kind of trying to understand the report done by RK Engineering. I appreciate them taking the time to do this report, but again, when in the peak time in June, it leaves us with 8 parking spaces. I'm wondering if those people from the Holbrook Senior Center have to park there, they're going to get charged to park there. I understand that it's shared, but they're going to end up spending money to park. So again, I'm just trying to understand this. It says they come up with the project would have a nexus of 8 parking spaces. I mean, to accommodate the local businesses next door, and I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
Okay. Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, at this point, I'll go back to what I said about, the city. It's a city lot, just like the city parking structure in downtown. The city on the parking structure wanted to see all, if not most, of the parking maintained, in addition to an exemplary use and more parking. Here, we're shortchanging the folks in this area, and a whole wide group of them. I would love to see, honestly, at this point, I don't want to deny a hotel on the site, but I'm not ready to approve it under the current circumstances. There's a lot of projects, we're not under the gun to have to approve something. We're here to make sure that we get quality projects that don't have negative impacts on the community. And so I think that maybe it takes a little time to go back, massage this thing, and come up with some creative ideas. And I think for the for the sake of the community, and I think for all of us up here on the commission, we should have a little more studies on what the parking impacts are. You know, one thing that I would like to know, and I don't know this up right here at this moment, is how much impact is there on those businesses? I mean, yes, they're probably underparked based on today's standards, but by how much? Are we talking that, hey, if the hotel project absorbed, 25 spaces, everybody's covered? Well, great. I don't know that right now. I can't tell you that there's a magic number out there, plus in addition to what we're seeing out on Bush Street and the surrounding areas. So I don't feel equipped at this point to, say maybe we'll approve it, but here's the following conditions. I really don't feel like we have that advantage at this point. I would love to have them come back to us, but I would also love to hear from the applicant after we're done deliberating to see what the thoughts are on that end as well.
Okay. Well, a couple of things I want to just comment on, and that is that, first of all, Phil mentioned about the red roof in, and I think the reason why that was brought up was that, and I'm sensitive to it because I live in that area, and the red roof in is a drop-off for county and state correctional people that have been released into the system. And basically they have 25 to 30 days that they can stay at the red roof inn. And I think one of the conditions that I'd like to make sure that we do is that, this particular property doesn't enter into any of the agreements in that respect, because that is something that is causing a lot of issues at the north end of the neighborhoods. Park Santiago, Floral Park, and several other neighborhoods are impacted by that on a regular basis from the homeless and everything else that exists. I think that one of the things that concerns me, and it's something that we as a planning commission can't really take into consideration, we can talk about it, but we really can't take into consideration, is the city has gone out to say we would like to sell this property. And they've said we want to sell this property and we want to sell it as one property. We're not going to maintain it. We're going to stop maintaining it. We're going to basically let it just ride out the time until somebody comes along and says they're going to put a project in. So I think at the end of the day, whatever project we put in here, the project is going to take away 93 parking spaces. I don't see that decision is going to change unless there's a change of heart from the city and the council from that perspective. So, I think what we have to deal with is how do we take care of some of the issues that have been discussed here tonight by the public and also by the commission. My two issues are that, and it really didn't hit me until I started to hear it from the public, is, we are creating the traffic is a challenge at times during the day at that intersection, but the real question is somebody coming off the 5 and going south on Main Street, how do they enter into the property? Because as I understand it, remember, you have a light just at Buffalo and Main Street, and then your next light is by the Green Parrot and the Bowers Museum. So that says that people are going to be making U-turns at that intersection to get into the property. And I'm just, that's one concern that I have. And the other issue that I think is something that needs, the study that we talked about, we had 2 different studies. I'll just say this, the study that was given to us by the traffic people said it was 198 rooms and we were down to 120 because that's all we needed. But the reality of it is that our revised study said it was 161 rooms and it was 120. I kind of look at the numbers and say, if it was 198 and we were down to 120, then you'd go to 161 and you'd be down to 80. And I find it hard that we would have that few parking spaces for the number of rooms, the number of employees, the restaurant, and the public. So I'm a little bit concerned about the traffic study itself. Those are my basic comments at this point in time. Any other comments from the commission?
I think at some point we got to throw out a motion here.
I'm open for a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, may I add, Chairman? The You may know Santa is a fast developing city. Parking is an issue and will be an issue, regardless you like it or not. For added a new business to our city, especially hotel and any business development, new business development in our city, will be added more job for our resident. I think if possible, if developer and a city could able to sit down and come some sort of compromising or come develop a joint venture, whatever, to maybe help developer to build or create a parking structure, not 100 or more, could be create more 120, maybe 200 more parking spaces on the project. By doing that, we'll create more parking space for the public as well as the hotel guests. And not doesn't mean the parking structure will be managed with the city, but will be managed by the hotel or a contractor as a parking contractor. But by doing that, I think definitely will meet, will satisfy everybody need. I think, I know a lot of cities around us, like Garden Grove, the Westminster, the city council give away land to the hotel developer along Harbor Boulevard, called International West, the city Garden Grove, to attract hotel developer coming into the city for long-term bedroom taxes will be created for more revenue for the city. I think our commission should continue this particular items and for the further discussion, and might give city and developer more time to negotiate and maybe to some sort of agreement, and then come back to our commission, and we'll be more happy to discuss and vote on it.
Mr. Chair. So I think what we're hearing right now, I think from all of our comments, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to have some more studies. I think based on what the input we received tonight and just from our own questions and curiosities, one thing that I'm concerned with is I think that once we get to a certain point with the studies, I don't know if what's proposed still makes sense. I want a hotel. I'd love to see a hotel there. I'd love to see restaurants, but I don't know if it's going to work in the current capacity, not necessarily layout or any of that, but just capacity. And I know that the applicants probably got, a structured agreement with the city as far as what they're paying and what they're hoping to accomplish on the site. I don't know if that's something that the applicant can go back to the decision makers and talk about, just give them the input that we're seeing from the community and what we're all concerned with. I would like to, continue the item, give the applicant some time to kind of figure out his options, but also to ask staff to come back to us at the appropriate time with a study in regards to what the impacts are on the displaced parking and what else are we looking at?
And the police turning into Main Street. Oh, yeah, the turn.
Oh, the circulation.
Yeah, the circulation for the turn into the left-hand turn.
Right. And also, too, I would like to have a little more than just one condition or line from PD as far as the impacts, especially given what we have just up the street with the Red Roof Inn. So I know my motion is kind of all over the place. So I'd make a motion that we continue the item. If we, remind me, if we continue it indefinitely, does he still have to
We have to renotice indefinitely.
So can we just continue it to a date certain? And then at that point, if they're not ready, we can always address it at that point?
Can I recommend that we let the applicant give us the opinion before we make the final determination? I think he may have some
let's do that.
comments on how it impacts him.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like.
I didn't hear what you said.
I believe the applicant would like to get a chance to kind of give his perspective on how the continuance would impact this project. So before you make a motion and the vote, maybe it'd be nice if we can get him to tell you how it impacts this project for a moment.
Okay, if you believe that's going to help, then go ahead.
Again, I appreciate all your comments and concerns. This is not a project that's just come up in the last month or two. This project started in 2015 when approached by the city to buy this real estate. This project has been through numerous reviews, numerous discussions. It may be the first time you guys have seen it, but I can't understand why that would be, because I've met with you folks in the original planning and reviewing of this. This project has not changed dramatically. I would gladly get rid of the 2 historical homes, and I'll put more parking there for you. The historical homes don't make any dollars for this project. They're a requirement of the city, not of me. I've kept them because that was asked of me to keep them. The project itself then would catch the additional parking that's required, and we would make that. But if this body chooses not to want to vote on this, I would gladly carry this over to the council and take it up with them and see what their vote is, because this was brought to me by this city. I'm pushing over 2 years, almost 2.5 years putting this together. I sit on the chamber. I spend my time in this city trying to bring businesses to this city, and this is what's expected. I know the system. I've spent 40 years developing here, and this is how we get treated. It's very difficult for me. It's almost two-faced for me to sit here and try to bring other businesses to this city when this is what we deal with. They look at me like I'm an idiot for trying to even develop here with the way we've been treated. And this is an example of not following their set rules. We followed all those rules. We've done what was asked of us. And now you guys want to carry it and continue it and study it more. It's not going to change the 93 stalls that the city has chose to sell. I didn't cause that. The city did. They put us in a bus, they took us out and asked us to buy the real estate and develop it. I chose to do that. Now I'm actually questioning myself why I did that. Do I believe in the city? Yes, I do. Do I believe in this system? Not at all. Not at all anymore. And what I'm looking at is the same thing I looked at when the purchase and sale agreement was done, and we continued it for 2 weeks, to come right here and be at this stage today. The councilman that asked it to be continued is the person that said, let's put parking on Buffalo. It used to have parking there. They've now said, let's put it back on Buffalo. So what you see today is not something I created. It was requested of me to create. And I've spent the millions of dollars to get it to this stage. To just have you people want to continue it again, it doesn't make much sense to me. It's there, it's a valid project, and it makes sense. And I'm not the one tearing out the parking lot. I was asked to take it out to build what I'm building. So, that's all I have to say, unless you have any questions.
You said it was an option in regards to the historical homes. If you took just did one historical home, because it did add character to the hotel, how many parking spaces do you think that would give? If you just kept the one?
The McFarland House, if I was retain the McFarland House, I could probably, I'd dispense of the patio area, I'd probably get another 20 parking stalls, 15, 20 parking stalls on that site.
So 20 and possibly 30 on the other side? Or are they all going to be on the other side? You wouldn't use that empty space there now for parking. You'd just keep the parking all on one side.
Parking would just be between it would be difficult. It would just be between the McFarland House and the hotel at that point, because that's the only spot that would be empty.
So you're looking at maybe 50 spots?
No, I could not achieve 50, maybe 15 or 20 at the most.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. If you were to demo or take one of the houses off of that property, it would have to go in front of the HRC because it's a historic registry, and it's going to have to go in front of the HRC in order to demo
or
relocate.
And that would require additional environmental review.
Right.
Yeah, that's why they're there. It's because it would be difficult to remove them.
Fully understand why
Yes.
they're there and why that's taken.
And they are ancillary to the hotel. By code, they're ancillary. They're the same services that could be provided inside the hotel. If they weren't there and inside the hotel, I would have the needed parking. So, Council, Commissioner, you are correct. It is a very difficult site to deal with. I started trying to deal with it when it was just the city parking lot. I actually designed 2 stories going underground parking. That's just not accepted in our community today in this region. It is in LA, it's just not used up here. That's what drove me to go after the lots to the south, to try to create surface parking, close off Bush Street, close off the traffic index into Bush Street, keeping that more of a residential theme, which is already overzoned with overlaid with professional offices, which half of the properties down that street are, as today, professional services. So it is what it is, and you know, you guys have to do what you have to do, and we'll see where it goes from there. Any others?
Anything else? Okay. What's the motion?
Well, I'll just, before we jump into any motions, I'm just going to say, you know, the project's asking for discretion from us. And part of our judgment has to come from not just simply meeting with an applicant, listening to staff, but listening to the community. And I think the testimony from the community tonight didn't just impact me. I've heard all my colleagues mention or ask something of the folks that came before us, and thank you all for coming out. You know, I didn't know the full impact of what this project was going to be, how it was proposed. I didn't know. Again, when I thought of what was going in there, I was thinking of what happened or what was going to hopefully happen at 3rd and Broadway, and I thought, oh, well, city ain't going to change gears. It ain't broke, don't fix it, try to do the same thing. I didn't realize what the impact was. That's why we have public hearings. That's why we have the testimony. So, you know, I appreciate what staff's done and the work that they've gone through, but, you know, again, I think we could massage this project to make it better. I don't believe we have to just one shot and that's it. And if that's what we're expected to do, then that's not what I'm up here for. So with that being said, I'll throw a motion out there to continue this. I'd like it to come back. I think it does need further study. I mean, some may not think so, but I think there's quite a few that do. I don't feel comfortable trying to site plan from the dais. I mean, we're sitting here entertaining ideas of whether we keep a house, lose a house, but as Candida mentioned, that's another CEQA review. Historical falls under CEQA review. So I'm not comfortable trying to come up with a solution up here tonight. And that may not, I know that the councilman for this area punted it for 2 weeks when the agreement was before the council. We've got a project before us now. At that point, it was a transaction. Here we've got a proposal, and we're trying to look at how this works. So with that being said, I'm willing to make a motion that we continue it based on what I said earlier, that we have a parking studies and police input brought back to us. And, you know, I don't know if we massage the project. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the project in its intensity right now works. That's just my humble opinion. I don't know if I'm ready to make a motion to that effect, but I don't know what to make a motion to. I mean, I don't know to say come back with 10 less rooms or 20 less rooms. I don't feel like I want to go that route. I want to kind of leave it up to see what the reports come back with, see what staff can work with the applicant, and bring something else back to us. That's where I'm at, but I don't know where you guys are at.
Chairman, I think I feel like you feel. We don't want to see this project go away. It's a good project, but it's unfortunate that it wasn't taken into consideration in the discussions early on to say we need to keep parking here as well. If it's something the city could help with to figure out, you were mentioning, you know, how many parking is actually needed around there? What is the capacity? What's not? If the city could do that, then and help us understand a little bit better and come back. And if it's something the developer is willing, I know he's been at it already for quite a long time, but if we could just hold on 3-6 more months out of all those years, perhaps it could. I don't know how long it would take to get the information. If a month is suffice, I don't know with the holidays. So,
I mean, and you know, to your point, Commissioner Leo, that's why I say, you know, if we continue to a date certain, maybe not too far down the road, maybe whether it's 2 weeks
January.
or a month or something, just to give you guys a chance to assess the situation and come back to us. I don't want to, again, I don't feel comfortable punting to a finite date way down the road. I feel like you guys need to work with the applicant, talk to other staff, and really come up with something that you can inform us on.
Sure. And just FYI, our next meeting will be on January 22nd.
Right. Oh, so we're not doing the first
Right.
meeting?
And in all fairness to us, I want to tell the applicant, I know you said you brought it before the council, and I'm not sure if you met with anybody here, but this is the first time that I hear about it. And to be transparent, at least I know my council member, and I'm saying mine, the one that appointed me, did not talk to me about this project. So it shows to the public how they let us be independent of our votes. So in all fairness, because this is the first time I hear about it, like I said, my councilman did not tell me about it. I think it is a good opportunity for us to continue doing some of the research, because we just got this packet late last week. So we had a huge packet that we had to read, and we have to make decisions. To me, I think it's not fair. It's not fair for you. It's not fair for the community. Like I said, it'd be great if we would have that opportunity to look into this further, because again, we owe it to the community and of course to yourself as well, so that we make the best decision. And a weekend of review of just these notes, I personally didn't feel that it was enough, because if you look at the agenda, we have another big project on there as well that, so we have to, I think we do need that extra time. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to go ahead and make a motion that we continue this to, what's our January meeting?
22nd.
Continue this item to January 22nd. In the meantime, staff will work with the applicant to figure out how to study the loss of the parking and a public safety assessment on the impacts of what conditions can be done to make sure we don't have a nuisance property.
Commissioner Becerra, previously you asked for us to also look into circulation issues as well.
I apologize. Circulation as well, correct.
Okay.
And that was specifically to
The left-hand turn from the
From Main
southbound-
Street.
Yeah, Main Street.
That's all part of that.
I second that.
Okay. Any other discussion at this point in time? I'd like to make a couple of comments here, and that is that I think that we have to also, I think we have to consider some of the things and not consider certain things with respect to where we're going with this project. Because I think one of the things that we have to look at is that if we look at the parking needs around that area, we'll have a ton of needs. If we look in any part of the city, you're always going to have parking problems or parking issues. This parking lot, as I said, from the city's standpoint, it's no longer considered to be a valuable property for that need, because they went out and sold it, or they're trying to sell it. So I think from our standpoint, I mean, I look at the parking, and I hate to say it, but I think it was talked about some of the people on 19th Street, and it happens all over the city. If you want to control the parking, you have to control it through permit parking. And permit parking, like it or not, it does work. I mean, permit parking does work, because in parts of the city that are impacted and they've gone to permit parking, the parking issue goes away. So I think we have to look at some of the things and say, this is not in our purview to be discussing for this particular project. I think we have to look at what's in our purview for this particular project. That's my own comment on that. But I think that, we need to, if we're going to study this, I think we have to set some expectations also as to what we're expecting. For instance, if we're sitting there saying 124 spaces is not an acceptable number, what do we believe that acceptable number should be? I mean, we have standards within the city today. What do we believe it to be? And if it's 12 or 15 spaces, that's one thing. If it's 40 spaces, that's another thing. And I think we got to look at that particular aspect and say, well, we have to set some kind of boundary, some kind of guideline as to what spaces we want to have, or what we believe is adequate for this facility. I think there are a few things that are still not quite understood, and like I said, I believe the traffic study or traffic pattern is not really defined, and it wasn't defined in the package as well as I understood it to be. So those are my comments at this point in time. If there's any further comments, Phil?
I want to add, Mr. Chair, I appreciate what you just said, because I hate seeing these parking variances. We see so many variances. I mean, we have I know we're in flux right now. We're updating our general plan, we're updating our zoning code, but, at some point, I don't know, what is it, like from day to day, we're going to come up with different parking, and well, another consultant said 1.8, the other one said 1.79. I mean, we're really just trying to just match whatever is being applied for into a space. I mean, we as a city, I think we all have ideals of what we think the city is, and everybody up here is concerned about parking. And, granted, we are a dense city. We hope that our transit infrastructure will improve over time. But, at some point, to your point, Mr. Chair, I think that you're right. We just at some point have to have some sort of expectations. What we have before us include parking variances. It's not like we're saying, yeah, you met the standards, but too bad. You're saying you're applying for variances. You're applying to deviate from the code. We have standards, and he's asking to deviate from them. And it's a fair request, but again, I think we're all not super comfortable with it at this point. So
and
thank
that's
you, Mr.
fine.
Chair.
And I will say that one of the other concerns that I've had, and I continue to have, being on the planning commission, is that people hate. I want to say that the public basically doesn't understand that. Unfortunately, what's happening is the state is dictating reduction in parking requirements across the board in many different areas, especially affordable housing. So we're shrinking the amount of parking that's being required by virtue of what's being dictated by state legislation, as well as we're looking, as a city, we're looking at other cities to determine what other cities have as far as parking requirements, be it a restaurant, or be it a professional building, or it be a housing development. So I think we have to understand that there is going to be some shrinkage that's going to occur when it comes to that. But we are seeing, in most cases, variances, and the variances are always at least including the fact that people want to have less parking spaces with more units, and that's a reality that unfortunately we're dealing with on a regular basis. And I think we have to kind of adjust as we go along. Okay. Kevin? We have a motion and a second. at this point in time.
Can we clarify the direction on the analysis of the parking? So the premise on the analysis of the parking is that we will assume that the 92 spaces are gone, and we will be focusing on the impact of the parking of the hotel itself.
No. I'm asking about the impact of the loss of 93 parking spaces.
Okay.
I think you've misstated it. What I want is an assessment on the impact of the loss of the 93 spaces.
Okay, and that is that a general consensus of the commission? Because I was hearing something different from the chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, I think we have a motion and a second.
There's a motion and a second.
All right.
Go ahead, Ken.
I do feeling for the developers, and because the city, developing a hotel is important to not only the applicant, also important for our city. But I do support the motion to postpone the hearing until January 22nd, 2018, so give the applicant a chance to go back to the city. Well, you asked me to buy this property. Now they have a problem of lack of parking spaces. I need help. Please help. Maybe the applicant and the city can able to work together and come some sort of a solution for us.
Yes.
Okay. Let me do two things. Lisa, can the applicant speak again on this at this point in time, or do we have to go through? Pardon?
We have a motion and a second. I think we should take a vote.
Okay. Let me make, for clarification from your standpoint, yes, you are correct. I did say that the fact that the 93 parking spaces are going away, no matter what, in a business deal with the city. My concern is not to analyze the 93 spaces. That's Phil's motion, and it's been seconded. So I will honor the motion and the second at this point in time. It's just that whether I agree with that particular situation or not, that's, I'm looking at this from the standpoint of having some kind of study and some continuance so we can do something that's going to relieve some of the concerns that people have. I don't necessarily agree that we have to figure out what happened to the 93 spaces. They're gone. That's what I'm looking at from a business perspective. That's my point. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it's 6-0. And Eric has recused himself. All right. We need to. Okay, this is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 6. Site plan review for 2016-03 and variance numbers 2017-05 and 2017-06 to allow a mixed-use development, the Madison, with deviations to parking and setbacks located at 200 North Cabrillo Park Drive. Staff?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you. Again, the project before you is the Madison, located at 200 North Cabrillo Park Drive, site plan review 2016-3, and variance numbers 2017-5 and 6. I'm sorry, having malfunction. So this is an aerial photograph of the Metro East mixed-use overlay zone. The arrow is pointing to the subject site, and just as a background of the Metro East area, the intent and vision of this area is to allow mixed-use urban village and office area. It's to create an active area where people would basically walk to all the commercial uses as development continues. The subject site is on Cabrillo Park Drive on the west side. To the north and south are 2 office buildings. To the west is the Interstate 5 freeway, and across the street to the east is the Lion 1901 project, which is also mixed use. The project site is 2.79 acres, and again is in the Metro East mixed use overlay zone. It's another view of the property showing that it's currently vacant. The request is to construct a 7-story mixed-use residential and commercial development with 260 units, 4 of those being live-work, with ground floor retail of approximately 6,500 square feet and a 3-level parking structure with 445 parking spaces. The applications are site plan review and 2 variances. The variance is for a side yard setback 30 feet in lieu of a maximum of 10, and a parking reduction of 1.7 spaces per unit in lieu of required 2.0 spaces per unit. For background info, the site was analyzed previously and had gone before Planning Commission in 2015 for less units, but the same type of project, mixed use, residential and commercial, 6 stories with 217 units, 6,300 square feet of retail, and a 2-level parking structure with 444 spaces. This is the proposed site plan, which has the publicly accessible open space along Cabrillo Park with an upper floor of more open space. Your pink areas are identified as retail, the commercial component, and then the orange areas are your live-work units. The green shown on this site plan is the leasing office. There is one access off of Xerox Center Drive, and along the south part of the property you'll see a fire lane, which is why there is a proposed 30-foot minimum setback along that property line. These are building elevations, a view from Cabrillo Park Drive and along the freeway, and then along Xerox Center Drive and State Fund Drive, which is the driveway to the north of the site, or the semi-private street. This is a landscape plan showing the amenities and packages that are offered on the site, which if you see on the southwest area of the property, the fire lane is going to be double used as an open space area, which could potentially lead to areas where the residents could, recreate and, run around the property and do whatever they'd like as far as open space goes. They also have private courtyards within the center of the property. This plan does show a pool area as well as the public accessible area along Cabrillo Park Drive and in the upper floor. The project does comply with the MIMU design principles. It has ground level commercial uses and live work along Cabrillo Park Drive, a forecourt design which contains a positive mix of outdoor seating and landscaped areas. The design is contemporary in architecture with high quality finishes and materials, and it supports the goals and objectives of the city's strategic plan. The project meets or exceeds development standards except for the variances. The standards pertaining to the height, the size of the developable lot, the frontage type, and open space are all in compliance. Again, the variances are 4-year side yard setback and parking reduction. The MIMU currently requires 2 spaces per unit. The proposal is 1.7 based on the plans, and staff is actually recommending 1.8 spaces per unit. And this is based on a study that we're currently undergoing for citywide, as well as catered towards Metro East. And because the Metro East is intended to be an active urban village, we're accounting for an increase in alternative transportation modes such as walking, bicycling, transit. And so by reducing parking, we're also taking that into consideration that more people will be using those active lifestyle modes rather than just parking and just driving to and from sites. So as development comes closer together, you should see a change in parking trends. Environmentally, the site is covered under the EIR that was done for the Metro East area, but to analyze also greenhouse impacts, we did have the applicant prepare a greenhouse gas study, which does show that there's no significant impacts. They did provide a traffic impact analysis and a health risk assessment that is incorporated as part of the project, and conditions are related to, as far as the health risk assessment, the windows being closed off along the freeway and proper ventilation for the residents. There was a sunshine meeting about a year ago. 5 community members attended. There were positive feedback from the attendees. Concerns were mainly related to circulation and traffic conflicts along Xerox Center Drive. And as a result of that, the applicant did provide a traffic impact analysis that shows that there's no significant impacts to several intersections that this project may potentially affect, which therefore no additional mitigations are required above and beyond what was required by the environmental impact report for Metro East. We had a study session about 2 weeks ago, and this project was introduced to the commission. So if you have any additional concerns, I believe we did vet through some of the issues identified. We did receive one public comment, which I have forwarded to you via email from the adjacent property owner's attorney, identifying concerns about the traffic impacts along Xerox Center Drive that could impact the proposed project could impact the adjacent office building. And again, the applicant did submit a traffic impact analysis to show that the counts that they performed for the site and for the potential and future use of the site would not generate any significant impacts. Staff is recommending a resolution to approve the site plan review and 2 variances as condition. If I may direct the commission to page 6-16 in your report. Condition number 2 identifies that with the recommendation for a reduced ratio of 1.8 spaces per unit, staff has added the provision that the project either reduce the number of units to accommodate what their current plans show of 445 spaces, or that they add additional parking to satisfy the 1.8 spaces, or a combination thereof depending on how the plans are revised. The applicant has identified, since we wrote and distributed the staff report, that they will agree to the recommended parking reduction of 1.8 in lieu of the 1.7 they initially had on their plans. And then this concludes staff's presentation.
Commission, any questions on staff, Phil?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that was actually going to be my first question. So I'm not used to seeing a condition with the options. Usually we get a project put before us, and then we say yes or no, or modify the condition. So if I understood you correctly, you're saying is that after the staff report was circulated, the applicant said, I'll choose option C.
Essentially, they are willing to add parking, but in the event that some of the plans don't work out, we want to give them that option to either do a combination of both.
Well, what's before us? Well, that's probably the better question, because I feel like you just kind of want a concept. You want us to kind of give you or do you actually want us to approve a project tonight?
Well, the plans that you've seen are proposing the 1.7 spaces per unit.
Okay.
But because we don't have plans that show the revision to 1.8, we would like the commission to adopt a condition that allows them the flexibility to still do 1.8 based on our recommendation, but that the plans don't have to go back to you for review.
Well, why wouldn't the plans just come before us ready to go? I don't like the idea of like, what are we up here for? No, we'll just let staff do this. We're just kind of kicking back and letting you guys do it. I mean, I'd feel more comfortable if there's just a project before us and we can go yes or no or as conditioned. But right now you're saying, well, it could be this, could be that. So later on when someone says, you approved this, I'm going, oh my God, I didn't know. I thought they only chose the onions, not the lettuce and tomatoes.
Yes, the applicant has chosen to move forward without having to revise the plans before they go to commission.
So they're going to go with the 1.8 you said?
Yes.
Okay, so is that going to, would we see significant changes in the plans that come before us?
It is not anticipated that if they add the parking, it would be all subterranean, is verbally what we've heard. If they reduce units, there'll be slight modifications to the architecture, but the parking structure would remain the same.
Well, no, but you're saying they're choosing option C. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that they have the flexibility to choose either of their options. They've opted verbally to choose A, which is to add parking.
Oh, add the 23
which would be subterranean. But in the event that for some reason structurally they can't accommodate that, then that's where the condition gives them that flexibility.
Okay. I won't keep beating that one up. The other questions I had, so condition 7 restricts their ability to charge for parking. Why are we doing that?
It actually was a condition on the former project in 2015 that we do want to keep it open to the public, especially since there will be guest parking and commercial parking available to those who want to patronize the commercial units.
We're talking about giving everybody options. I mean, that just kind of seems like a different direction there. Okay. And then condition number 11, residential storage plan. So is there going to be, so within the unit, is there like an off-site place that residents are going to store stuff, or what does that pertain to?
It is not off-site, it is on-site, but it could be located within the parking garage or in other floors, depending on the tenant that chooses to opt for a storage unit.
Okay, and I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Eric?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One of them deals with this early technical draft, the DKS parking study. Do you know when that will be done? Look, and I'm not going to be cute about it. The reason why I'm asking is we're basing a 1.8 off of a study that hasn't been done. So that's my concern. So is there some rush that we have to get this done now, or is it accommodating the applicant?
I'll allow Jill to answer that part of your question, but the parking study, the city reviewed a first very technical draft. The administrative draft that's more legible to policymakers and most members of the public is anticipated in the next few weeks. And I do want to reiterate for everyone on this commission that will contain a series of options that the city may or may not elect to pursue. So it'll say, for example, the city may reduce its parking to 1.8 per unit because the conditions are ripe, and then we would have to bring forward a code amendment to actually codify that recommendation. So just because the parking study suggests it doesn't mean it becomes code immediately.
And just a quick question, if it's an early draft, what does the final draft look like? I mean, the technical difference. Is it just drawing conclusions?
The technical draft right now is literally just a bunch of charts and tables and paragraphs that explain those charts and tables, and the administrative draft becomes embellished and more becomes easier to read in terms of like policy and suggestions. That's typically how these iterations go.
And then, do you know when the notice of preparation was published for the EIR? And the reason why I ask is because an attorney for the adjacent property owner, I think in that letter said you had to use existing conditions for the traffic analysis. My understanding is usually that's defined as the point at which the notice of preparation is prepared, or it's when the original environmental review began.
So the EIR was done in 2006, which I'm assuming it's in the same year. As far as the traffic analysis, there were mitigation measures adopted as a result of that EIR. The EIR mitigation measure is that each project has to do its own traffic impact analysis to demonstrate that it's still consistent with like the build out of the EIR. So they did perform that exercise or that mitigation measure as part of the project to demonstrate that the project itself is not generating impacts above and beyond what was originally analyzed in the EIR.
Okay, so when was that? Just
it was done in 2016.
16. Okay. All right.
And then updated recently to accommodate the changes that they did in their plan.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
The EIR that you're talking about was done by the applicant, right?
The EIR was done by the consultant that did the Metro East mixed use.
So this is the study that, Vince, you mentioned that encompasses 4,000 units, is that?
Right, the EIR that was approved as part of Metro East studied about 4,000 units within the Metro East overlay zone. Once we get to that number, we have to go back and open up the EIR and start doing it all over again.
But at the last planning commission meeting, that's what I asked for, to determine what we have on that whole area, because we have at least 4 or 5 different projects that are currently being brought forth, and wanted to know how those projects play into the total EIR study of 4,000 units. Because we have 1901, we've got the 2 AMG projects, you've got the project coming up on the Elks property, and then we've got this project. So all of those in that concentrated area, we need to just see where we stand with regards to that EIR and with respect to these projects. So that's one thing that I'd like to make sure we do have covered on the next planning commission meeting.
Sure. You're around 2,000 units for all those projects that are coming through.
Okay.
It's about halfway there.
All right.
I do want to mention that the traffic impact analysis did identify some of those projects, like the 1901, some projects that are downtown, as well as some of the recently entitled projects, like the AMG project on First Street.
Correct. Okay. Anybody? Any other questions of staff? Okay, go ahead, Cynthia.
Maybe because I'm still trying to understand all this, but Phil reviewed under A2 and the options that the developer has in regards to parking, but then 14B says a revised parking management plan shall be submitted to the planning division for review and approval. The plan shall include additional parking. So how do those all come together?
So the parking management plan should just identify, the areas where there's assigned parking for residents, there's parking for commercial, and things like that. The language identifies the plan shall include additional parking with exhibits showing where that additional parking is going to be, as far as like if they add the additional 23 spaces. Right now, the parking management plan that they've submitted conceptually only shows the 445 spaces per the existing plan that's before you. If we opt to allow the 1.8 space per unit ratio, they would revise that parking management plan to show, let's say, the additional 23 spaces, and those parking spaces would be either assigned to residents or commercial or guests, however they want to rearrange the parking management plan.
So would those extra, let's say if they identified 20 spots for the commercial, would those spots be able to be available to the guest or residential folks there after a certain hour?
Yes, right now, the only areas that are gated are the assigned parking. The areas that are currently open are 52 spaces to be shared between commercial and guests.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of staff? Hearing none. I'd like to make one comment I missed. I apologize for this, but I'm assuming that none of the commissioners have anything to disclose at this point in time on this item. No? Okay. Does the applicant would like to say or talk about this project?
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. Jeff Larson with MVE and Partners. We're the architects on the project. I just wanted to be clear that we are going to provide the 1.8, the additional parking in the lower level of the garage. And that's our plan, just to help that with the discussion tonight. We were here just a couple weeks ago. I don't think we need to walk through everything again. And we're here to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Any questions of Jeff?
Just so we're clear, so it's going to be option A, add 23.
That's it. We're adding 23 spaces.
Okay. All right. Madam Secretary, we received any communication on this item?
All communication has been distributed.
Okay. We will now open for a public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission on this item, please fill out the request to speak with the Secretary. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I have two individuals, Tim Perone.
Good evening, Chair McLaughlin and members of the Commission. My name is Tim Paone. I'm a land use attorney with Cox, Castle, and Nicholson, and I'm here to represent the adjacent property owner, the owner of the Xerox building. And the reason that it's important, this issue is important to us, is because if you recall from the site plan, we will share Xerox Center Drive, and the two parking structures will each have ingress and egress from Xerox Center Drive. So this becomes obviously very, very critical to us and to our tenants. But overall, I want to say we don't oppose the project. We're not here to oppose it. We'd like to see some changes in it, but we welcome a residential project next door. So, please understand that that's our purpose here. Our concerns are really two. First is traffic, and I did send a letter in that staff mentioned. And we have a concern because that was just the traffic study was based purely on modeling. You can hear from the tenants of the building and those who are there every day that at the intersection in particular of Xerox Center Drive and Cabrillo Park North, that you get to rush hour and there's a lot of traffic there, and there'll be much more traffic in the future. Now, we understand the issues of, where residents are leaving in the morning at the time that the tenants of the building are arriving, and that it's reverse traffic. We do understand that, but nonetheless, there hasn't been an analysis of it specifically based upon observations. It's only been done through modeling, and modeling's, most often, of a great value, but it doesn't tell you what's really happening right there. So we would request that there be observations conducted there to see if there's any tweaking of that intersection and the signalization that could be helpful and prevent problems in the future. The bigger issue that we'd like to discuss is the parking variance. And it's been interesting sitting out here tonight listening about the other parking variance requests. And as just a general comment, I would say that if a parking variance for projects becomes the norm, it's no longer a variance. And that if your policy, as stated in your ordinance and in the overlay zone planning documents, says 2.0, that's the law of your city. And so for there to be a variance from that, it has to meet very specific requirements. the two requirements where we feel that this project comes up short are in the special circumstances. The special circumstances are described in the proposed findings very, very vaguely. This is the last project to develop here. And, a couple other characteristics are pointed out, but it's nothing like the size, the configuration, the typical things that variances go for that put a piece of property at a disadvantage. There's nothing like that there. It's the last property in the area to develop. So that would mean, as a matter of policy, that every time there's the last property in a neighborhood or in an area to develop, it gets a variance. And there's no real clear rationale for that. But the other requirement of your code, or another requirement of your code for a variance, is that if you didn't grant the variance, the landowner would be prejudiced, would lose a special right. Here, the suggested finding is not, and by the way, your ordinance, as it should, uses the word necessary. Here, the suggested finding doesn't say that this is necessary to preserve their right to build in the overlay zone. It just says it preserves their right. Well, necessary means that if you didn't grant the variance, they would not be able to build a project under the standards of the overlay zone. There is not an iota of evidence to that effect in the record. From a legal perspective, it's our view you can't approve this variance because it simply does not meet the standards. Now, I understand, it's very understandable, there's a study coming. But that study, if you look at the staff report, it says something like, in general, there is a preliminary technical study coming. And Commissioner Alderette asked some questions about that. And a preliminary technical study, which has not yet been reviewed, approved, and resulted in a change in your ordinance and the requirements, should not be the basis for acting contrary to your zoning ordinance. Because a study is coming that might show something that could lead to a change in policy and an amendment of your ordinance. Now, if the variance is granted, and by the way, a few years ago I represented the developer of the Lion Project, 1901 East First, and just as a point of reference, that project had 10% more spaces than the 2.0 requirement. This project has 10% less. That's the new project right across the street. And why a developer would go for 10% more under the circumstances, you'll have to speculate yourself. But developers don't usually do that unless there's a feeling that it's necessary or helpful or needed. So if the variance is granted, what it means is that the guests, retail patrons who don't fit in the 53 spaces are going to have to come into our parking structure. And that's not right. We should not have to bear the burden of the overflow. Whether it's weekends, nights, whatever, it requires additional security. It requires additional maintenance. There's issues with respect to our tenants that we are contractually obligated to maintain their space. If we incur additional costs with respect to this, as with any office building, those costs get passed on to the tenants. And all of that is based upon faulty findings in terms of necessity for this variance. It's inconsistent with what has happened across the street. It's inconsistent with other projects in the area. And the legal findings simply cannot be made. So we welcome the residential project. We'd love to see it there. We just ask that it be parked according to your code. And we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Sam Daskin? Sorry.
It's close enough.
Danskin.
Thank you, Commissioners. Sam Danskin. I'm a partner in the law firm of Hall Huguenin. We are in the 10th floor of the Xerox building. We've been there for more than 10 years now. One of the reasons we relocated our firm to that space, obviously the Xerox building is the top Class A building in Santa Ana in central Orange County. And that was obviously a big draw for us. It's a lovely space, great amenities. But it was also the location of that building that was critical to our decision. That location is ideal for our employees who live in all areas, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, LA County, South Orange County, and the freeway access was really a big deal for us. It made it easy for all of our employees to get in and out of work. It made it easy for our attorneys to get to the courthouses quickly and easily. And I have not dug into this traffic study in any great detail. I know what the conclusion of the study is. I can read that much. But I can tell you anecdotally what our folks have seen, what I've heard from them, what I've seen with my own eyes. And I will tell you that in the last few months, especially with the completion and the lease up of the 1901 project, we're seeing increased traffic at that intersection, actually at multiple intersections, but we see it especially at the Xerox Center and Cabrillo Drive North intersection. It's noticeably more impacted than it's been in years. Since I've ever been there, we're seeing lines of cars going back almost stretching to First Street on Cabrillo. And I will tell you that Xerox Drive is a very short and very narrow drive. It has really 2 lanes each way, but in reality, those lanes are very, very tight. And it doesn't take much for the entirety of Xerox Drive, especially in the rush hour time periods, to get completely jammed up. And that prevents our employees from exiting the parking structure, as one example. At 5 o'clock, we now are getting reports that it's taking people 10 or 15 minutes just to get out of the parking structure. And that severely impacts their life. These are people who want to get home to their kids or run their errands, etc. And in the past, we've been able to offer them a great building with great access to and from their homes, and we're seeing that impacted greatly. We're also seeing, I think, a safety risk. The Xerox Drive has what I'll call a turnabout. People use it as a turnabout. They'll flip U-turns there. And we've seen tenants from the 1901 project actually drive into Xerox so they can pull around and go through the light and into the back drive of that project. We have Social Security on the 5th floor of our building. We have a lot of disabled people, physical disabilities, who are being dropped at the curb, people who are dropping off their co-riders, I'll call them, commuters. And with that U-turn action there, I foresee any number of safety issues with another 444 some odd cars during the day coming into that very small, narrow drive. And that's another concern I have. So it's late, I'll stop, but I thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak at this point in time? But he can speak on...
Chairperson.
Let me just clarify one thing, Lisa. It's okay for him to speak as an individual at this point in time, correct? All he has to do is fill out a form?
I am the applicant.
Yeah. Did he already speak? No, he did not speak. Someone else spoke someone else spoke on behalf of the applicant. So he can speak at this point in time.
I have to go before the applicant speaks. I didn't fill out the form.
Well, neither of you have filled out a form, so I'm going to ask both of you to fill out a form when you complete it. So what I will say is that he did ask first to speak. Okay. You've asked second. I'll be glad to have you speak second, and he can speak first.
I'd be pleased to yield.
You're going to yield to him? Okay, fine.
I'll yield priority of order.
Okay, that's fine.
Good evening. My name is Howard Hall. I'm a partner of Hall Huguenin. My partner Sam Danskin just addressed you. I'll be very brief and then I'll go fill out my form. The one comment that I wanted to make in addition to Mr. Danskin's comments, which I certainly reiterate, is that it's my understanding that when this mixed-use development was planned for what would now be 3 properties on our side of Cabrillo, it was my understanding from the manager of the Xerox building who opened that building, Miss Allison, and I'm going to not know her last name, but she was the project manager for the owner of the building from the inception of the building in 1988 until, I believe, a year or 2 ago when she retired. And it was my understanding when this project was first considered in my discussions with Allison that there was a very specific traffic flow that was intended for the development of what is now the remaining vacant parcel. And it was my understanding from Allison that it was contemplated that the Xerox Drive was going to be the ingress only for the vacant property, and that the exit from that property would be driving along State Compensation, our neighbor onto the north side of the vacant lot. So that it was going to be, if you would imagine, a U-shaped traffic flow that would lessen by a factor of 50% the impact upon Xerox Drive. So by making cars that come into this Madison building go in through Xerox Drive, but then exit along State Compensation, the traffic management flow would be much less impacted upon us, and it would be shared by our neighbor to the north, the State Compensation Fund. I've never known the specifics, but it was relayed to me by the person who opened the building in 1988 that that was a very clear condition upon the development of this remaining vacant lot. That would alleviate all of the concerns that were expressed by my partner, and it would allow our employees to exit the building at rush hour with no worse situation than they currently experience. It's our great fear that that 10 to 15 minutes becomes even worse with the development of Madison. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Bob Bisno. I'm one of the developers. With regard to what the last council said about entering on one side of the building and then exiting State Comp, that's simply contrary to the recorded CC&Rs. The recorded CC&Rs direct that all ingress and egress is our common driveway with Xerox, and we have a fire safety emergency exit. So, Council, I don't know where you got that information, but a review of the CC&Rs would dispel that myth. With regard to the Lion project across the street, and we had Land Use Council here, now, why would a developer build more parking? Well, the answer was simple, as everyone up here probably knows. The Lion building came with parking prepackaged. When the General bought that property, it had a multi-level parking garage behind it. The parking was already there. The General didn't want to knock over parking, so he simply adopted the parking that was there and built units. And that's why you wind up with a situation where you have more parking than you need. It wasn't market forces, it wasn't zoning. It was the fact that that was what existed, and the cheapest way to get it done was not to demolish more, but simply to build. With regard to the parking ratios, I think our traffic engineer would be pleased to address them. Recognize that our traffic is counterflow. Our tenants leave in the morning, they go to the work. The office tenants come in the morning. They're not using the same side of the street, hopefully. Finally, in an effort to reduce traffic, we're adding 260 units. I only hope that council's employees want to live with us. It is our job to create the best environment out there and take 260 cars or more off the road. I thank you for hearing me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions of the applicant again? No? Thank you, Bob. Okay, with that said, are there any further public comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll take it back to the commission for discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Bill?
Two things. One, I appreciate Mr. Paon's description and discussion on variances. I mean, spot on. I mean, you hit the nails on the head. I mean, it couldn't have been said any clearer and better. So thank you for saying that out loud for everybody to hear. It's in our staff report, but again, thank you for saying it. I appreciate staff's willingness to be flexible. I really do. And, you know, you always hear people talk about wanting us to be business friendly, but I don't want vagueness. And I think that what a code is supposed to do is provide certainty. You know, you come in, you look at it, and you go, oh, they want 2 spaces, they want 1.8. It shouldn't be a roller coaster. It shouldn't be, let's roll the dice and have to go to a discretionary body every time. There should be some certainty. And we're getting a lot of these requests for variances. And as Mr. Paon laid out in his remarks, I mean, is there really a case for it? And at this point, I don't see it. The one variance that I see that possibly makes a case, but even then I'm not 100% sure on, and that's the setback in regards to fire. And I would ask staff, is that something that because of revisions to the plan is causing the need for that setback? Or when it was initially approved years ago, that was just overlooked?
It was as a result of the changes, the revisions, it had to be set back further. The original project actually had the building much closer to the property line, which met code.
So the previous project, or the approved project at this point, actually met the code, it was fine. So it's the revisions that are causing this request for this variance?
Yes.
Okay. So for me at this point, I mean, I think it was laid out pretty clearly that unless there's a real significant reason, I don't see why we would be entertaining these changes at this point. I appreciate the additional units, but I mean, there's a whole point of why we have the MIMU to begin with. So unless there's something that I'm missing that's really overriding that the applicant can't make that work, other than just not a lack of desire to, then I probably won't be supporting the proposal as is.
Eric?
Hi. My comments are similar. I think one of the reasons why I asked the question about this preliminary technical study is because I think that for me is the problem, that I don't think we have the sort of substantial evidence that we need to grant the variance, and I think we need to go back to work in that regard. As it relates to the traffic concerns, I'm not so concerned that anecdotal evidence is going to provide us anything more than what modeling does. I think the modeling is supposed to work in a way that accounts for the realities of what's going on at the property at that time that the study's done. So, but specifically, I have a real issue with variance number 2017-05.
Cynthia?
I ditto everything you guys said, but I also feel uncomfortable with, I feel like we're trying to shove something into this space that doesn't fit. I understand that in the compensation building, Caltrans just moved in there as well. Huge amount of employees that just came from Irvine, and I don't know that this is what they were also expecting. At the Xerox building, we also have Social Security in there, law firms. It just seems like it's a business environment, and I feel like we're trying to shove this project into a space that perhaps we need to relook at and see what else fits on that side. Already we have residential on the other side, and it kind of sat well, but the variances and the feeling of just trying to put something there because we can, I'm uncomfortable with.
Any other comments? I'd just like to make a few, and that is that I think that this project has been in front of the commission before, over several years back, and at that point in time, and I'm just going to, from the standpoint of new on this, is that we took in, that it was taken into consideration that you had basically full occupancy in the state fund building, and you had full occupancy in your Xerox tower. So you had both of those facilities, or whatever is considered to be full occupancy. And I think the question at hand here is that you know, when the project was brought to us back several years ago, it was a 2.05, I believe, ratio of parking to the units, and now it's gone down to 1.8. And I think that's the basic concern that we have at this point in time. It has been vetted out from the standpoint of, you know, where it fits in between this whole thing. I think, though, one thing that does come to my mind is that, you know, has there been a recent traffic study? Because I'll just say I ditto what was said by several of the people talking at the public speaking. When you go down and turn down to get onto that between First and Fourth, it's a big jam. I mean, it's a big traffic jam between First and Fourth. And I think that what's probably happened is we have not taken into consideration the additional occupancy of 1901, and the fact is that the traffic lights are still timed for what it might have been 8 or 10 years ago. Tate, I don't know if you're shaking your head, but do you know of anything that?
Well, I know we have the traffic engineer here who did the study,
and it did take into account, I believe, and he can back that up, but the full occupancy of 1901. They take into account current conditions. They do counts out at the intersection, and then they do cumulative projects for the area, and so fully occupied. As far as the timing, we adjust it annually. We look at signals annually to see,
okay,
do we need to retime them? So yeah, it's not a stale, the timing out there.
So your statement is basically we're up to date from the standpoint of traffic flow, taking into consideration 1901 and the 2 office buildings.
Right.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do we have a motion at this point in time on item number 6?
I'd like to put a motion.
Sure.
Recommend the motion to adopt resolution to approve site plan review 2016-03 with condition that the provide minimum parking is 1.8 as the plan division suggested, and adopt resolution approving variant number 2017-05 as condition, and adopt a resolution approving a variant number 2017 as -06 as condition.
Do we have a second on that? So you're basically approving the current.
That's correct. With the condition that the developer applicant provide the minimum 1.8 parking spaces per unit.
Okay. Second? Not hearing the love on that. We don't have a second. Well, to move it forward, I will second the motion at this point in time.
Sure.
And then we'll move it forward from this point. Any discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
5-2. Okay. Thank you.
Before we go, Lisa, is that clear? Like that's it, or do we actually need to make adopt a motion to deny it? Approve it, and we said no. But do we have to make a separate motion to deny?
No.
The motion was denied,
5-2.
so we need to, if you are going to deny this
4-3,
project,
4-3.
you need to make a motion to deny or a motion to approve in a different manner. Thank you.
Okay, 2 different conversations. What do we do at this point in time?
So we denied the motion to adopt these resolutions.
Okay.
So I guess at this point, we now need to actually deny them, right? So it's just, we said, are we going to support them? We said no. But now are we going to deny them? Are we going to actually take an action to deny them? Is that correct?
Yes.
Let me correct the record. I think the motion to yes vote was 3, and no was 4. The yes vote was myself, the chairman, and
No.
You know.
Is that true, Chairman?
Yeah.
You voted yes. Put up your hand if you voted yes.
We can do a roll if you want to do a roll.
Yeah,
We do, yeah. Madam Secretary, would you do a roll call?
Okay, so we have a first by Commissioner Nguyen, second by Chair McLaughlin. Commissioner Becerra?
For this motion, I say no.
Commissioner Verino?
No.
Commissioner Alderetti?
No.
Vice Chair Contreras-Leo?
No.
Chair McLaughlin?
No.
Chairman, Commissioner Mendoza?
I'm sorry, we're voting on.
On
It's
the
a roll
motion
call,
that,
the last
Same
vote.
motion.
Oh, but you seconded.
No, it's because of the confusion on the part of Ken with regards to who voted what, we're doing a roll call vote of what we just voted. So from the standpoint of roll call, everybody here voted no. Your vote was?
Yes.
Ken's vote was?
Yes.
Gotcha.
5-2.
thank
So
you.
it's like 5-2.
5-2.
Chairperson McLaughlin?
Yes.
Can I clarify, at this point, you have two options. You have just denied the recommendation to approve the project. So the next option is if you wanted to alter the a motion to approve the project, perhaps with some conditions, or else you could deny the project.
You know what, I'm just going to cut through it. Let's just get to the bottom of this. It's 9 o'clock. I'm ready to go. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution denying site plan review number 2016-03, adopt a resolution denying variance number 2017-05, and adopt a resolution denying variance number 2017-06.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments on that? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. 5-2. All right. At this point in time, do we have any staff comments at this point in time?
Yes, sir, very quickly. On your dais there in front of you, you should have a electronic mail policy. We'll need this from each of you in order to get you to have your emails assigned to you from the city. So once you fill these out, turn them in, we'll get you an email address, and we'll get you business cards with the updated information for you. So that's number one. So if you just collect those end of the night, you leave them there, we'll pick them up.
Vince, what do we put as the mail station or address?
Put M20 as the mail station, as the planning. Well, you can leave a blank, we'll fill it out.
M20?
M20 is the planning division mail station, yes. And then number two, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, Happy Holidays. It's our last meeting of the year, and we're coming back on January 22nd, 2018. So thank you for all your support this year. You've been great, and I look forward to a great 2018. Thank you.
Phone we can put down as our cell phone, is that what you're?
On the form?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be used on the business card, so it's just to connect with you in case we need to get hold of you for some reason. We'll use your home phones for that. No, just kidding. And your home address.
Okay,
too.
go ahead. I never answer that phone anyways.
And Lisa, did you want to say anything about this policy at all, just to kind of refresh them?
So, I mean, you're all aware that the emails that you get would be considered
In the department we're putting down as planning?
Planning, yes, yes, sir.
Sarah, is this the one that I did already? I don't have to do this. Okay.
Oh, okay. You did electronically.
Okay, any other staff comments at this point in time? All right, Phil.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See you in 2018.
Lynette.
Just want to wish everybody happy holidays, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2018. And I appreciate everybody's work on this dais, and especially these late meetings that we have, like today.
Happy holidays, everyone. I think I was lucky that I missed out on 4 and 5. Those were. I thought you guys forgot me. I text Vince and I'm like, hey, we on 6 yet? So anyway, but happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everyone. It's been an honor serving with you guys this year. I look forward to next year, and let's make some new goals for the new year.
Beatrice?
Oh, just saying happy holidays. You guys enjoy your vacation. I'm going to enjoy my kids. So, and Happy New Year.
Yes.
Same here. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you for your job well done. Thank all the staff. Looking forward to a great New Year.
Happy holidays to everybody. Thanks, staff, for putting together a little get-together before we came in here. It was very nice to be able to do that and kind of mingle with staff and everything else, and it was enjoyable. I hope everybody has a great holiday and a good New Year. One thing, Vince, I'd like to see if we could look at doing, a couple of commissioners have brought it to my attention that we're seemingly, I know Tay has been here representing Public Works on a regular basis, but we haven't seen anybody from police in a while. And there have been a number of discussions that have come up, during our sessions that warrant some feedback. And is there any particular reason why that has stopped all of a sudden? Because in the past it was something that was done on a regular basis.
Right, it's a schedule shift. Commander Gaminsky and both Bill Montgomery are off on Mondays now, so we'll talk to Commander Gaminsky and see what we can do by getting a presence back at these meetings. So again, back then when we had a presence, we had 3 PSOs. We only have 1 now. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll look into that for you.
I mean, look into it. I mean, I'd like to bring that to the attention of the police chief if that's something.
Absolutely, we'll raise it as high as we can to get some kind of response.
Are you
Sorry,
doing that?
can I say something else? In the last planning commission meeting, we had our last agenda item come before us, like as a work study session. Can we do that more often with some of the other agenda items that are being planned?
Sure. That was requested by this body here at one of the subcommittee meetings, I believe. Get some of the major policy issues up here before you. So some of the big projects will get you a chance to preview it at least a couple of weeks to a month ahead of time. We did that in the past, and we established these subcommittees. Our former director said, let's put some subcommittees together. And now we can take a look at that again. But we'll definitely bring back some of the bigger projects to you ahead of time before you get a chance to vote on it.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Let's go home.
With that, we are adjourned. See you in 2018. Sarah?
Sarah. We're gonna get some cupcakes.
Oh, yeah, and if you guys want to
What?
go grab
Hey, where are you going?
any leftover food.
Yeah.
You better be going.
Thank you, Sarah.
What? You bet your ass.
I need parking too.
What?
Are you going to take any time off?
What?
Well, if City Hall's, if City Hall's and
It'll be good.
then you'd be better to be here.
Now, are you done?
With
Now I know.
and I have finals on Thursday.
But if this is gonna be